welcome everyone to this important part of the 12th Clean Energy Ministerial Programme. Now, we have today a series of action-packed launch events for you, featuring ministers, captains of industry, heads of international organisations, and a host of international experts. We are here to launch a series of major new global clean energy coalitions that will look to supercharge various aspects of those transitions. They will look to spark a new clean industrial revolution, form a formidable global network of hydrogen shipping ports, and empower citizens and communities to reap the huge benefits of clean energy transitions. And a bit later today, also stay tuned for a new CEM campaign to grow a global sustainable bioeconomy. But today we begin with the launch of the CEM's new Industrial Decarbonisation Initiative. The heavy industrial sectors are sometimes referred to as being hard to abate, but their importance makes them impossible to ignore. So I'm very proud to see this new CEM initiative launched today, and it is my pleasure to hand over to our good friends and partners at UNIDO for this event. And with that, I hand over to Tarek. Over to you.
Thank you, Dan, and good day to all of you, excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor and pleasure to welcome you to this launch event of the Clean Energy Ministerial Industrial Deep Decarbonization Initiatives. As Dan mentioned, the industrial sector of the CEM member countries consume close to 23% of total global energy supply. That represents close to 80% of energy consumed by industry. CEM members are therefore well positioned to catalyze a step change in optimizing industrial energy use and to capitalize on the opportunities to decarbonize. There are gaps in governmental policies to stimulate the demand for low carbon industrial products and systems for benchmarking these products, including the data infrastructure for embedded carbon. India and the UK put up a new horizontal work stream on the industrial deep decarbonization, aiming to create the market demand to drive additional actions for the deep decarbonization of energy-intensive industrial sector, such as steel and cement. In this side event, we are launching this initiative, telling you more about it and inviting you to join. With this background, it's my honor and pleasure to invite the Director General of UNIDO, Mr. Lee Yong, to give us an opening statement.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Tarek. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to join you today, together with representatives of the two co-lead countries, United Kingdom and India, to launch the Industrial Deep Decarbonization Initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial. The initiative is very timely and well-coordinated action on standards and the public procurement to create a globally competitive markets for the green industrial products. It fills urgent gaps and amplifies the ambition to drive net zero industrialization. And the decarbonization of the industrial sector is a critical step towards meeting our climate goals, taking early actions to reduce the carbon intensity of the industrial processes in energy-intensive sectors like cement, iron, and steel represent a substantial share of the energy related to emission globally. Therefore, taking early actions to reduce carbon intensity will help reduce emission, bringing them closer to the net zero by 2050. Reaching net zero emissions of these sectors will require reducing demand of these materials, encouraging more and higher value recycling, and switching to the clean energy sources. It is therefore imperative to develop a globally competitive market for low carbon industrial products. Alongside all this is the need for collective, long-term, and aspirational vision of what net zero emissions steel and cement industries could look like by 2050. A vision that is equally supported by the governments and industrial worldwide. Excellencies, through this initiative, UNIDO will work with governments worldwide to agree on a global 2050 vision for the decarbonization of the steel and the cement industries with ambitious targets informed by the collective stakeholders' input. The initiative will act as a platform for the exchange of best practices in order to generate the knowledge and the guidance needed to make a step change towards industrial decarbonization. The initiative underlines the three key principles: ambition, cooperation, and transparency. We must demonstrate ambitious targets to drive net zero emission industry. We must work together and cooperate to share best practices and develop guiding principles and tools that allows countries to learn and champion their own industrial decarbonization pathways. We must agree on the transparent data reporting that will be the basis of, for the benchmark products and tracking progresses. Excellencies, I would like to thank the United Kingdom, India, Germany, and Canada for their commitment to the initiative. I'm confident that with support of member countries and the private sector partners, the initiative will actively accelerate the pace of industrial decarbonization and the support activities of existing key initiatives within the Clean Energy Ministerial and other global fora. I invite you to join the initiative and to work together to develop a practical pathway to net zero, raising the bar of ambition in the lead up to the high-level dialogue on energy in September and the COP26 in November 2021. I thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Director General Lee Yong, for your words and statement. And now I would like to invite the ministerial keynote message from the co-lead partners. The first statement from the Honorable Anne-Marie Trevelyan, Minister of State for Business, Energy and Clean Growth, UK.
Reducing industry emissions to net zero is seen as one of the most challenging parts of the energy transition. But while this is challenging, a consensus is emerging around the solutions. One barrier to the decarbonisation of industry is the extra cost, or green premium, commanded by low-carbon industry materials like green steel or green cement. Low-carbon technologies are available, but transitioning to them is expensive. At least in the near term, producing low-carbon steel and cement increases the price of the material. So a producer offering a material well above the market price will soon be out of business. This is especially true in a world of globalised supply chains and tough competition. However, consumers buying products using low-carbon steel and cement typically only see small increases in costs, since those products typically represent a small share of an overall product or project. Homes using low-carbon concrete are around 3% more expensive. A car using low-carbon steel is around 1% more expensive. Indeed, major automakers such as Volvo are already setting out plans to use green steel in their cars for this reason. Passing costs on to consumers willing to pay these premiums has the benefit of safeguarding a strong business case for producers that cannot afford the initial capital investment. So, governments and the private sector need to coordinate their action to buy low-carbon industrial products. This provides certainty for producers to invest in low-carbon production, putting them on a path to net zero. That's why today I'm delighted to announce the UK, in co-leadership with India, is launching the Industrial Deep Decarbonisation Initiative, or ID for short. This initiative will align government action to create markets for low-carbon industrial products. We will work to ensure that the companies investing in a pathway towards net zero today have a growing international market to sell their green products tomorrow. This initiative will serve as the demand pull for clean energy innovation in energy-intensive industries, creating powerful incentives for business in these industries to deploy clean technologies. This is a government-led initiative bringing private sector end users of steel and cement, like car manufacturers and wind farm developers, to make similar commitments as governments so that the demand signal is stronger. And we see the Clean Energy Ministerial as the perfect house for this initiative and for the deployment of policy innovation for market creation. I firmly believe that this initiative has the potential to unlock the development of a global net zero industry. By COP26, I hope to be able to launch a procurement campaign under the IDE so that countries and companies can align for the procurement of low-carbon industrial materials. I would like to pay tribute to the invaluable support of India in co-leading this initiative with the UK, as well as the governments of Germany and Canada for providing their active support. We invite interested countries to help us continue to shape this initiative and to raise our collective ambition. I also would like to say a special thank you to UNIDO for providing operational and analytical support to this initiative. I would also like to thank the Leadership Group for Industry Transition, the Mission Possible Partnership, the WEF, the Responsible Steel and Climate Group, the Energy Transitions Commission, the Rocky Mountain Institute, Breakthrough Energy, the Swedish Energy Agency, IRENA, and IEA for supporting the development of this initiative with us. Through our presidency of COP26, the UK will bring countries and actors together to address major challenges in each sector of the global economy. We will build on the best cooperation of the past and lay stronger foundations for the future. So I ask you all to work with us to also make COP26 a turning point for industrial decarbonisation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency Anne-Marie Trevelyan, Minister of State for Business, Energy and Clean Growth, UK. Now I would like to invite for the keynote message from India, delivered by His Excellency Alok Kumar, Secretary, Minister of Power, India. Floor is yours, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Tariq. Good afternoon to all the participants and dignitaries. I'm very happy to be a part of the 12th Clean Energy Ministerial meeting being hosted by the Government of Chile. On behalf of the Government of India, it gives me great pleasure to join in launching the Clean Energy Ministerial Industrial Deep Decarbonization Initiative, IDDI, jointly with Government of United Kingdom. I must also thank you to the Government of Chile for providing us this unique virtual platform to be able to make this announcement, and to the coordinator of this initiative, UNIDO, for supporting the development of this effort. We are also very happy to note that the governments of Canada and Germany have already expressed their interest to participate in this initiative. This initiative gels very closely with India's commitment to NDCs for reduction of emissions by 33% of GDP by year 2030 from base level of 2005. Let me also share with you, we in the Ministry of Power, Government of India, are implementing a national mission for enhanced energy efficiency. In this mission, there is a big component called Performance, Achieve and Trade, PAT scheme. It is a flagship program of the Government of India aimed at improving energy efficiency in energy-intensive industries. The program is a major contributor towards reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and energy savings. I'm glad to mention that the second cycle of this program, completed in 2019, has resulted into energy savings of more than 14 million tons of oil equivalent, which translates into avoidance of around 70 million ton of carbon dioxide emissions. We are continuing with this ambitious program, and now we're running the 6th cycle of this program. For both the two key sectors initially selected under IDDI, that of cement and steel, India is the second largest producer in the world. These two sectors are covered under the Perform, Achieve and Trade scheme since its inception and has made significant strides in reducing their specific energy consumption levels. We have been able to achieve around 6 to 7% reduction in the specific energy consumptions in these sectors. I would also like to take this opportunity to share with you that by successful implementation of various programs on energy efficiency, we have achieved total energy savings of more than 28 million tons of oil equivalent, which is almost more than 3% of total primary energy supply of the country. I'm also very happy to share with you that very recently Government of India has announced a very ambitious national hydrogen mission, which aims at promoting green hydrogen for use in industries. And this will be a very ambitious program, and we seek support of all the countries in taking forward use of green hydrogen in mitigating the emissions. India is also keen to work for preparation of standards for carbon reporting and benchmarking of the products in cement and iron and steel sectors, and further expanding the same to other energy-intensive industrial sectors in a phased manner. We would also like to work towards sharing of best practices and transfer of technology for production of green cement, iron, steel, which can be the next step for this initiative. I would like to propose at this forum that initially our approach has to be of that of a facilitator and hand holding the industry till the time the technologies are viable and widely acceptable. So market making can be taken up in a phased manner, but we feel that first step has to be of facilitation. Once again, I thank you for all the dignitaries for joining us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Alok Kumar, Ministry of Power, India, for your kind statement. Thank you very much. And now I would like to invite messages from the joining members. We would like to start with Molly Johnson, Assistant Deputy Minister, Natural Resources Canada, on behalf of Canada.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Molly Johnson, and I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister for Low Carbon Energy at Natural Resources Canada. I'm pleased to be here to help introduce today's session and to help launch the Industrial Deep Decarbonization Initiative, which we see as an important step in our efforts to decarbonize the industrial sector globally. I would first like to take this opportunity to thank our partners in UNIDO for their role in helping to get this initiative off the ground. Canada recognizes the importance of addressing emissions from the industrial sector and the need to work together with our international partners in order to be successful in doing so. Canada recently announced the Strengthened Climate Plan, committing to more ambitious targets for 2030 to be net zero by 2050. This plan includes a range of efforts that directly support the decarbonization of the industrial sector, such as increasing access to non-emitting power supplies and supporting innovation and new low-carbon technologies. We also recently announced a hydrogen strategy, which sets out a path for integrating low-emitting hydrogen across the Canadian economy, including in industrial sectors. Canada also sees great value in advocating for public and private procurement commitments in order to stimulate the demand for low-carbon industrial products. We are leading the way by example with action on climate change through our own federal operations. The Government of Canada has committed to ensuring it is a global leader in government operations that are net zero, resilient, and green. This includes zero-emission vehicles, energy efficient and zero-carbon buildings, green procurement and green technologies, and climate-resilient services and operations. Canada also recognizes the importance of working collaboratively with our international partners to enhance and expand our respective efforts to green government operations. For example, we're working with the US to lever shared purchasing power to drive government operations to net zero emissions and increase the climate resilience of fixed assets. This collaborative work has also included efforts to engage the broader international community. As a first step in these efforts, the US and Canada have established a first-of-its-kind forum for countries to cooperate on greening their government operations. This initiative will enable countries around the world to share lessons learned, promote innovation, and where relevant and possible, set common goals for countries to support the work underway to meet their commitments under the Paris Agreement. Canada is privileged to have had the opportunity to play a leadership role with previous CEM efforts in the industrial sector, specifically the Energy Management Working Group and Energy Management Campaign. We now look forward to playing a supporting role in this new and exciting initiative. I look forward to our continued collaboration to address emissions in this important sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Molly Johnson, Assistant Deputy Minister from the Natural Resources Canada, on behalf of Canada for the supporting statement. Now I would like to invite His Excellency Dr. Winfried Horstman, Director General for Industrial Policy at the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, Germany.
Dear Minister Trevelyan, dear Minister Singh, distinguished speakers and guests at this launch of the Industry Decarbonization Initiative. Greetings from Berlin, greetings from our Minister Peter Altmaier, who is very delighted about this initiative and very proud that Germany is a member of this very important initiative. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be joining the IDDI, and we thank the governments of the United Kingdom and of India and the UNIDI for having launched this initiative for the new international cooperation in the IDD format. So within the current context of the German transition to net zero emissions, we made a big step forward in Germany because only last week we have decided to anticipate our targets. So we are targeting now becoming climate neutral in Germany by 2045, 5 years earlier than previously. This is a great challenge, and we have to really make big efforts to achieve that. Since we have a very large and sophisticated industrial sector in Germany, a lot of energy intensive industries too, so we have to work hard in order to meet this target, but we think that it is important to give a clear signal and to really have strong efforts in achieving that. There is no point in supporting low carbon investments, we think, if there's not a market for low carbon products for these investments. So this is where we really see the added value the IDDI can deliver. A coalition of countries should be willing to lead the way into creating new markets for low carbon products. This is one very important step. Another one which we think is more cooperation internationally in climate matters. And here we have the very popular discussion now about the formation of a climate club, which we appreciate very much. We think coordination is very important. In an ideal world, we would have an emissions trading system for all of the world. So this would be the ideal climate club. However, we see that this is certainly a very long way to go. So we think we definitely should start with discussions about the climate club format, and we have to see how far member states or international governments are prepared to get when it comes to carbon pricing and to regulations which are targeted at reducing emissions. We think that the industrial heritage which we have in our countries should be certainly, so to say, transported into the future, because as we have seen over the past 10 years, industry is one of the backbones of our economies. We saw that in particular during the financial crisis 2008, 2009, where industry was really important to bring countries through this crisis. And I don't want to mention the big names of the corporations we have, because it's not good as far as competition is concerned. But I think you all know what we have to do in order to safeguard that we meet the climate targets and also safeguard the competitiveness of our industries. And we are looking forward to have the cooperation in the IDD format with you. And we very much hope that we will have a growing format here, that over the next few years we can manage to get more and more governments into this very important initiative, and we are looking forward to having the cooperation with you. Thank you very much, and back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Horstman, Director General for Industrial Policy, Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, Germany. Thank you for your kind words and supporting statement. With this, we conclude the high-level segment, and I want to take the opportunity to thank all representatives and excellencies from the co-lead countries and joining member countries. Thank you very much. In preparation for this initiative, the partners developed a study to understand the process of fostering industrial transition through green public procurement as a means to develop a guide, particularly focusing on two key sectors, cement and steel. So this is an opportunity to present key thoughts emerged from this study. With this, I take the pleasure to welcome Gökçe Mete, the head of the Secretariat of the Leadership Group for the Industry Transition, to present to us the key takeaways from the study. Floor is yours, Gökçe.
Thanks a lot, Tarek. What a great start to this session. So I represent the Leadership Group for Industry Transition, that is an initiative launched under the UN Climate Action Summit to raise global momentum on industry transition. And it brings together 16 countries around the world and 17 leading companies from heavy industries. Leader Secretariat is hosted by the Stockholm Environment Institute, and it is supported by the World Economic Forum. Today, we've already heard that the industry decarbonization is nothing short of critical, and heavy industry sectors are harder to abate. Industry transition requires public policy support, and green public procurement is a policy tool that is gaining a lot of attention. Indeed, as public procurement of infrastructure such as buildings and bridges is often significant, the introduction of green public procurement, or GPP in short, policies could stimulate the demand for low carbon cement, concrete and steel products. And there are many ways to design a GPP policy. And as Tarek mentioned, LEAD has teamed up with UNIDO to jointly produce a study that provides an overview to the key components of GPP policy design and methodologies for target setting. Now, this study provides a background to the IDDI initiative. We aim for this to be a how-to guide on GPP policy design, and we have identified 7 steps to successfully design and implement GPP policies, in particular for deep decarbonization of harder to abate sectors. I'll briefly carry you through these 7 steps. Step 1 is about defining responsibilities. In this study, we recommend that responsibilities among procuring agencies across government and regions to be established early on, and the creation of a central body to design, support, and monitor GPP policies. Step 2 involves target setting. GPP policies require clear quantitative targets. And employment of a collaborative target setting process that includes stakeholder consultation and industry expert is central here to ensure quantitative targets are feasible to be implemented by the industry. In step 3, we address reporting standards and methods to determine and evaluate environmental footprint of a product, which are crucial for the purchasing authorities' decision-making process. We recommend compiling an open access database of products, which can help streamline product evaluation and increase transparency. Step 4 requires development of evaluation tools and guidelines to ensure transparency and fairness in bid evaluations. In step 5, we recommend establishment of monitoring and compliance mechanisms, and we also provide best examples. In step 6, we invite procurement agencies to consider putting in place processes to be able to evaluate, reflect on, and adjust policies and targets over time as technologies evolve. Finally, in step 7, it is crucial to build support structures and capacity to help improve the implementation of GPP policy, such as training programs on drafting tender documents. And to conclude my initial intervention, I'd like to reiterate that public procurement accounts for a significant share of international economy. By creating lead markets for green commodities, GPP policies can lead to significant emissions reductions in cement, concrete, and steel sectors. That said, there's still a lot of work to be done at the international level. The information we have received from several countries as part of our study shows that there's still a lack of high-resolution data across full supply chains and lack of standardized, comprehensive calculation methods for reporting and comparing product or projects' environmental impact. These insights confirm the need for a green public procurement alliance that brings together countries, private sector partners, and multilateral organizations to address these barriers in a concentrated manner. I therefore welcome the IDDI initiative on behalf of LEADER Secretariat, and I look forward to supporting their work and also look forward to the panel discussion next. Thank you.
Thank you, Gokshe, for setting the scene and the stage for our next discussion. We will now move to our panel conversation to discuss with prominent representatives from organizations and agencies active in the climate action, and particularly also on the accelerated action for zero carbon. With this note, I'd like to introduce my panelist. Gokshe will stay with us in the panel, but also I would like to invite Paul Durant. He is the head of the energy use sectors and bioenergy at the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA. Welcome, Paul. I would like also to invite Mafalda Duarte, the head of the Climate Investments Fund, in short, CIFS. Welcome, Mafalda. And I would like to invite Joanne McNaughton, the chair of the Board of Trustees of the Climate Group. Welcome, Joanne. Pleasure to have you all with us. And thank you for taking the time to join us in informing, as we are in the formative stage of this initiative, your thoughts and ideas would also inform how to shape some of the key actions that the initiative could undertake to catalyze market for low carbon commodities in a global scale. I would like to start with Paul, if I may. I know that IRENA has recently released the reaching zero target with renewables, the report. You even had a focused discussion this morning in Mission Innovation on some of the roadmaps or pathways to get to net zero across different sectors. I want to come back to the industry sector. The industry sector featured quite, especially the hard-to-abate sectors, as one of the challenging sectors. So maybe you want to share with us a few thoughts on what are the sort of the key action needed, at least on the industrial sector, to create global markets for low carbon commodities from your study, your analysis.
Thanks, Tarek. And it was fascinating to see the presentations earlier, and it's great to see this initiative launched. Let me talk a little bit about linking innovation to public procurement and driving markets forward. But first, maybe a couple of points about pace and scale. So it's often stated, but I'm not sure we've all fully internalized this, that the pace and scale of this energy transition is truly daunting. A 1.5 degrees goal doesn't just mean net zero by 2050. It means circa 50% reduction in emissions by 2030. Irina's done a 1.5 degree compliance scenario, which we published back in March, and it shows that we need a 5-fold increase in the pace of renewable power deployment, a 10-fold increase in renewable power production. And that's true across the energy system, but it's particularly true in the industrial processes. So in our scenario, fossil fuel use in industry needs to decline from about 3/4 of energy supply now to below half by 2030 and less than 1/4 by 2050. And clearly for that, we need a bunch of things to happen, one of which is further research and development and innovation. But it's mostly not about inventing something new. Most of what we have, most of what we need exists now. We do still need some systemic innovation to make sure what we have is better, cheaper, easier to deploy. And we need to build a wider spread knowledge and confidence to allow all countries to deploy that. But that part of the picture is being tackled by countries and particularly by Mission Innovation as an international collaboration. Its members, I know, are exploring ways to strengthen international collaboration on that, talking about that this week. But how does that relate to this initiative? So my key point is that we can learn lessons from other sectors, that you really make progress when you combine technology push, the thought that Mission Innovation can hopefully drive, with market pull. Let me very briefly cite offshore wind as a nice example. 10 years ago now, I was involved in funding innovation for that. And the pace that we've moved in the last 10 years is far faster than experts were predicting 10 years ago. 3 times, a third of the cost that we were predicting 10 years ago. And that, if you look at why, sure, we invested in R&D, but what was really important is governments found a way to create early demand for electricity supply from offshore wind. And that gave companies enough confidence in future demand to invest in scaling supply chains, to develop technology further. And we created this virtuous circle of improving performance, growing confidence, that feeding back into more investment, more learning, further cost reductions, and back around the chain again. Now, we need to do similar for the material production industries. One crucial difference I'd highlight is with offshore wind, that was a few countries leading the way. With the material production industries, we need many countries, indeed most countries, to pursue similar initiatives. We just don't have the time for it to diffuse gently around the world, which is why an initiative like this is absolutely crucial, and we encourage more countries to engage in it. Hopefully that's in good context.
Thank you, Paul, for bringing also attention to the fact that we need many countries, and they are also distributed both in developed and developing economies. So we also need to create a level playing field for all countries to join the action. And this comes to maybe my second question, where I would like to call on Mafalda Duarte from the Climate Investment Funds. I know you have at the CIF almost $8 billion of investments to accelerate the transformation in the clean technology and clean energy. I know also you have a specific focus on developing and emerging economies, and you have been driving also the discourse on transformational change and how investment can play a role in the transformational change of certain markets. And to you, Mafalda, what do you see the opportunities for investing in a transformational change in the industry sector, and how, what would be, from your perspective, the key policy de-risking, sort of the best policy de-risking instrument, at least in the context of the hard-to-abate sectors we are talking about? To you, Mafalda.
Thank you very much, Tarek, and a pleasure to be here with colleagues. And let me first, and Excellencies, congratulate UNIDO and the other partners, the Government of India and the UK, for launching of this CEM new initiative on industrial deep decarbonization. They're very much welcomed and very much needed, and we look forward to working with you and driving this agenda forward, which has become one of our strategic priorities as well going forward. So let me, before coming to your specific question, Tarek, just make a couple of other notes. I think Paul already alluded to some very key data. I'm going to add a couple of them. I fully agree with him in terms of the pace and scale, which is very daunting, and probably most of us haven't really internalized fully what it means, because it's something that we have not faced before. To say as well that the industrial sector, as we've heard this morning, is responsible for a quarter of global CO2 emissions. Out of these, it's important to note as well that the advanced economies account for around 20%. Most of the emissions actually come from emerging markets and developing economies. So we have to have efforts and have resources also focused on supporting the decarbonization in these economies. Again, just to reiterate the need for this space, the IEA told us in their recent net zero roadmap that these carbon emissions from the heavy industry must decline by 20% by 2030 and 93% by 2050. Clean technologies will play a critical role, and we heard this morning several ministers talking about hydrogen, and hydrogen also, according to these agencies, is going to contribute quite significantly, and carbon capture technologies, but also energy efficiency and clean energy supply to these industries. In this context, financing at scale will be needed to support these ideas and these technological solutions. And because of all of this context, when we were redefining our strategic focus going forward, we identified this area of industrial decarbonization as a priority for us. So working with our partners, the multilateral development banks, we developed a specific investment program targeted precisely at this, which we also hope to launch in the short term. And this is basically to do and try to do what we have been doing with the energy sector for the past more than 10 years, which is really support governments in the private sector to make investments, make different investment decisions, and take care of the risks and the major barriers to investment. In the case of industry, in the industrial sector and these industries that we have been talking about, what we foresee is supporting, and this speaks to your question, Tarek, what is it that it's really needed? We think that there's a need for interventions at national level, at sectoral level, at the corporate level, and at the facility or technology level. And therefore, we foresee supporting governments in establishing those targets that we've heard this morning, and policies such as energy efficiency standards, but also in the area of what we were just listening on, green procurement. At the sectoral level, actions such as the development of sectoral roadmaps, which basically speak to the policy, regulatory, social, and investment barriers that are needed for this transformational change. But also, how do we catalyze whole of sector transformation approaches through finance? At the corporate level, we foresee supporting things such as looking at the management of greenhouse gas emissions in the supply chain. By promoting, for example, life cycle emission analysis and the scaling up of these green procurement approaches, but also building corporates' technical capacity to issue green bonds, for example. And at the industrial and at the industry or the facility level, certainly, supporting investments in energy efficient technologies, but also, renewable energy power supply. So we believe that this is just a set of examples of the sort of things that we need to see, and that we are very keen in supporting through our new strategic area of focus going forward. In our case, as you said, Tarek, with a big focus on emerging economies and developing countries.
Thank you, Mafalda, and thanks also for highlighting the aspect of building capacity within industry on also taking inventory and understanding the climate, the emission base, and preparing the industry for the opportunities to invest. With this in mind, I would like to move to Juan from the Climate Group. We know that the Climate Group, as an international non-governmental organization, brings together quite a rich base of almost 300 multinationals and over 200 governments driving climate action and with a focus on fast, accelerated work. And I know that you have also previously have put on a number of initiatives, including the Industry Transition Platform and the Steel Zero initiative. I wanted to ask you, Juan, from the dialogue with multinationals and the appetite, assuming there is a demand there, the appetite to make the transition and the investment, what are you getting? What are the signals you're getting from industry leaders on this and the role that they can play?
Thank you very much, Tariq, and great pleasure to be here. And congratulations to CEM and the two governments for the work they're doing on the IDDI, and also to my colleagues on the panel who are all making their very significant contributions. To your question, I think the first point I'd make is that in my 20 years in this space, I have never seen such an appetite, including from business. We've used the word internalization about the pace of change. I think probably we're not internalizing the pace quite enough yet, but there isn't a question now that we need to do it. And I think that's highly significant. And I think the work of the CEM in actually providing the framework for companies to act is crucial. There's so much going on, but actually the pace is an issue. And there's an additional reason for that, which is huge wave after wave of stimulus packages for the COVID recovery. If we don't get them to be green, we're going to lock in more emissions. The second point is that the people who've been affected by COVID are people in heavily industrialized regions and in the global south. So we need to ensure that the recovery packages facilitate a just transition. And someone's already mentioned that the emissions from heavy industry are in the global south, majority of them. And that's why some of that work is so important. And we've had terrific leadership in India, both from the government, but from some of the big emitters. The Indian cement companies were among the first to join the EP100 initiative, doubling energy productivity. And we're now engaged as the Climate Group in wider discussions with industry in India. This is significant to your question, Tariq, because some of the richer companies in the richer countries embarked on this transition some years ago. But to see that leadership in the developing world, where we have assumed that it would be more challenging because of affordability, is just terrific. And I think our hope is they will leapfrog some of the poor practices of the past. On EP100, we've actually seen a cumulative emission savings greater than the annual emissions of France, nearly 330 million tonnes to date. So this is vital. But industry can't do it alone. You've mentioned the industrial transition platform, which enables peer-to-peer learning in those heavily industrialized regions. I'd like to pick up just two brief points, if I may. One is the importance of trustworthy standards which are globally consistent and which are recognized. Industry really needs those to incentivize them. If you know those standards are there, you know what you're working to, and you can hope there might be a premium for your product or preferential access for your product. So that helps create the market. The second point was around innovation, which I think Paul made. And industries, again, are making some of those long-term investments, but they need the recognition. So we do need that standardization. As well as chairing the climate group, I sit on the board of a company, biggest aluminium producer outside China, N+ Group. They have a technology which will enable the production of zero carbon aluminium, which is not quite as big as steel at the moment, but it's crucial for the energy transition, electric vehicles, etc., etc. And without that framework, what is the recognition for that extra investment, that innovation, which is crucial to enable us to have those zero carbon materials for the future. So I think this is a hugely exciting time, and the scope for something like the CEM to bring together these different coalitions of industry, of states and regions under the Under 2 coalition, it couldn't be.
We have lost Joanne on her last few words, but yes, Joanne, you were trying to say if your closing statement. Somehow we lost you. Please go ahead.
I was just saying that the collaboration which the CEM is leading is absolutely crucial to continue to incentivize and accelerate this innovation in low carbon.
Thank you, Joanne. Indeed,
materials and bringing lessons through.
Yes, thank you. Indeed, I share your enthusiasm by saying that we do indeed live in a very exciting times nowadays, and we are actually at the cusp of a transformational change that we really need to leverage it. And also, you pinned on one of the key levers of change, standards and transparent, which our Director General referred to, transparency, creating a level playing field for all actors to participate. And maybe this gives me an opportunity to go back to Gökçe, because you were saying that the study you mentioned that we needed to create a coalition of countries on the procurement front, and partly to drive that coalition, probably we need also to drive coordination and collaboration on criteria for benchmarking, on standard definition. I want to given the differences and the challenges that are faced in different regions and countries, how feasible, the political feasibility of getting a momentum on this? What are your thoughts on this?
Thanks, Tarek. It is true that there are, I think, establishing standards and finding kind of common language is crucial. For tracing carbon footprint of products, there's no certification of guarantees of origin for steel, cement, chemicals, or other relevant industrial products. But at the same time, there are differences and gaps. The gaps are different in different economies. And we have actually a far less understanding of the key barriers and challenges to bring about industry transitions in developing countries. Last year, for instance, LEADIT did a gap analysis. We looked at Indonesia, Mexico, and South Africa. And we've tried to understand the common barriers they have. They all have kind of five barriers we've identified in common. So one is technology, we've discussed that, finance, knowledge and capacity. Of course, there's the socio-economic context, jobs, politics, power, and vested interests. But when we look at these countries, we have seen that in Indonesia, there's no policy framework on industry, it's lacking. In Mexico, the policy framework is more rigorous. There's industry-specific targets and pathways, but there's the implementation of it is lacking. And then in South Africa, there were decarbonization plans that we have identified, but they lacked ambition. So there's definitely a need for support from international community on technology transfer, climate finance, capacity building. We've discussed these all. They are crucial for accelerating industry transition in emerging economies. And meanwhile, we need to also collectively need to make use of this power of collective action, in particular for setting up alliances and clubs of public, but also private buyers to amplify the impact of any measures.
Indeed. I mean, I think we have seen private alliances can work in certain commodity sectors, sustainable fisheries, although there have been a lot of issues, but where we can indeed, we can create global alliances, and I'm very optimistic that we can through international cooperation mentioned several times. That's where the initiative can play an important role. Assuming that we actually manage to push the demand and give signals that there is demand for green commodities, steel, cement, particularly these difficult to decarbonize commodities. How much time would how ready is the industry to deliver, or let's put it, say, on the supply side, what is the time frame horizon we're looking at for industry to meet this demand if we deploy the investments today? What time frame are we looking at? Maybe Paul, Mafalda, anyone can jump into this question. Or Juan, please. Yes. Your mic is now it's on.
Yes, that's okay. Thank you. Actually, aluminium is slightly ahead of the curve. Well, outside China, I may say, because it's often cited near hydropower sources of electricity. So we need, when the supply is there, to make sure the demand keeps pace so that the further growth continues. But there are other areas where, frankly, we need much more action on public procurement. And if the demand is there, industry will produce. Some areas will take longer just because of the technology constraints or the need to retool a factory or whatever. But once companies see a market, they move much faster than most people would have expected. So I think we shouldn't be worried about creating demand that won't be met. If the demand has to precede industry action, so be it. But actually, industry will then step up very quickly.
Thank you, Juan. Maybe I know we've been reminded to start wrapping up soon, but I want to push this a little bit farther by asking Mafalda, do you see an investment cycle that we need to jump on with the industry, the way they, especially in industry that have assets that is 30 years long? Is this the right time to talk to industry about investing in upgrading technologies for meeting such a demand?
This is the absolute right time, because I think we all have to understand that these are, if they don't adjust, they will have no market. The markets of the future are of green products. And therefore, but as my colleagues in the panel have said, there are significant risks and constraints, and there's a need of concerted efforts by the public sector and the private sector. And therefore, us making this a strategic priority. I mean, we have seen it. We have been working in developing countries, in emerging markets and developing economies for the more than 10 years, and facilitating and providing the incentives both for the policy changes and for the investments to happen in areas and technologies, in business models that were not existent before. And over the years, we always had views that why are we pushing these investments? Are more costly. There's a significant premium. But that's precisely where the role of this public capital and the concessional climate finance has a key role to play, like ours. We've demonstrated that with the right partnerships and working at the different levels, as I was mentioning earlier, and with the relevant finance, those investment decisions can happen, and you break markets and you see results, and you see really the beginning of a pathway that has no return. And therefore, I think this is the absolute right time.
Thank you, Mafalda. Good to highlight this. I know again we're running out of time soon, but final thoughts from all panelists. 30 seconds, please. I can start with Goshke and Paul. Yes, please.
Well, I suppose my final point is that once again we need a mix of policies that are adapted to specific circumstances. We need decision makers to strike this delicate balance, that we put incentives in place without overburdening government budgets, and we take advantage of policy experimentation and identify trade-offs. Last call again, we need positive international collaboration.
Thank you. Okay. Paul, your mic is off, Paul.
Thanks. My point follows on quite nicely from that. I agree with very much what's been said so far. I think one point that we've not highlighted, and this plays to the point that all countries need to be engaged in this transition and can be engaged in this transition, is this point around choices of where you locate heavy industry were often dominated by where the material supply was or possibly where the market was. But with green energy being a crucial enabler of this, those choices can be influenced heavily by where the cheap green renewable energy is, and that's often in developing countries. So those countries blessed with good renewable resources have an opportunity here to again leapfrog and change the dynamic of where global industry is located and what the trade arrangements are that follow from that, and deliver lower cost green commodities to the rest of the world. So there's some fantastic opportunities there for countries that maybe historically haven't been leaders in this.
Thank you, Paul, for bringing this up. It was a thought that I had, but I missed it. But indeed, because and the report that Mehdi was alluding to showed that the growth in demand, most of it will happen also in developing and emerging countries. So you're absolutely right. We need to get all the countries on board. Juwan, final thoughts from your side?
I would say that the frameworks which everyone's been referring to, the various policy incentive frameworks, will be more successful if they're designed in consultation with industry, and if they take account of the differing circumstances in regions, and the differing levels of government have quite a big contribution to make. The collaboration is key, because we don't want to just displace to cheaper, more heavy emitting locations. And I prefer that to be driven by the positives, such as Paul has mentioned of where the green power or other resources are than through more protectionist type initiatives. But frankly, if we don't look at that, then there will be some protectionism. And, you know, a lot of companies are global and they thrive when there's a clear global standard to which they can work, and that helps with driving the investment.
Thank you, Joanne, for these wisdom words. Indeed, part of the work, and this is an invitation to industry, of course, to join the initiative. As you mentioned, successful standards are done in consultation and in dialogue to make steps change. Final thoughts, Mafalda?
I mean, I would just say, because of the scale and pace of the transition that is needed, that we have been talking about, you know, we can't just allow market forces and the economics to play out over a long time frame. We really need to bring to initiatives like this one, others. We really need, you know, the public and the private sectors to come together, as Joanne was saying, in really concerted effort to drive this forward. This is 1/4 of global emissions that we are talking about. We will not meet our goals, our climate goals and development goals, without effort with these industries as well. So I would reiterate that keep thinking of pace and scale and the need for really bringing the public and private together. And as we were saying as well, you know, this is a very interesting area, because it really requires global efforts,
Yes,
not just efforts at the national level, but it requires global efforts. So we look forward to working with all partners on this.
Thank you very much, Mafalda. Thank you, Paul, Gokshe, Joanne. Thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure to have you, and thank you for your support to framing and feeding into the industry, the decarbonization initiative. I want to conclude by also thanking the co-lead governments and congratulate them on the launch, and and also the joining member countries. We use the opportunity to invite other member states of the CEM to join the initiative, corporate members, and all partners. So please take the opportunity of the CEM 12 mission innovation to exchange with the Secretariat on how to work with the initiative. I also want to take the opportunity to also announce on behalf of the Secretariat what Molly Johnson referred to, the relaunch of the Energy Management Leadership Award to recognize excellence in energy management in industry and commercial facilities. So the Leadership Award is being relaunched. On the CEM website, Clean Energy Ministerial.org, you can find for industry that wants to apply the further information on the application, and the deadline is 16th of August. With this note, I'm ready to close the session. Thank you, our listeners. Thanks to all the contributors and the participants, and in particular to also the colleagues in the studio coordinating and producing the session. Thank you to our host, Chile, the government of Chile, for this opportunity. And looking forward to see you at CEM 13. Thank you.
Brilliant. And let me just thank you, Tarek, and a huge thanks and congratulations to everyone involved, both in today's event and in CEM's new industry initiative. If you're watching today and inspired to play a role in this coalition, or maybe important new commitments in this area, please don't hesitate to contact us to find out more. We would love to hear from you. Now, do stay with us. We're going to take a very, very short transition and move to the CEM 12 launch event on the Global Ports Coalition. So definitely don't go away. Now, as we move to this important and exciting topic, we all know that shipping ports are an absolutely crucial part of the world's global transport infrastructure. But we often don't realize that they're also a very important part of the world's global energy infrastructure. So our second launch today, being the Global Ports Coalition, as part of the CEM's existing hydrogen initiative, is going to link together major ports from around the world, as these are recognized as being critical demand and supply centers for clean hydrogen in the future. So I'd like to pay huge credit to all in the coalition for joining today and encourage others to do so as we look closely at it and consider joining yourselves. You'll be in very, very good company. But with that, we'll look into launch this new event, and I'll pass over to my great friend after this short video, good friend of the Clean Energy Ministerial, Tudor Constantinescu. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan, for the introduction, and thank you to all your colleagues in CEM and to the IEA and to the Chilean Ministry for organizing this event. Now, we all know that ports are really key for the adoption of hydrogen technologies and necessary infrastructure for transport, but also for international trade. Ports, as you started to mention, are really at the crossroad of energy, transport, and industrial policies. Therefore, ports and coastal areas can help building integrated approach for the energy system that would help us both to decarbonize and to achieve energy efficiency at system level. As part of the CEM Hydrogen Initiative that I have the honor to co-chair, we decided to offer a platform for port authorities interested in using hydrogen as part of their decarbonization plans, or to play a more central role in the plans, in the strategies of their governments on how to use hydrogen, how to scale up, and how to make it an efficient bridge into the energy transition. The Port Coalition we launched today aims to be this global platform, of course, in synergy with other relevant international organizations. I'm pleased that we have already 29 ports, international associations, industrial partners, committed to sign a memorandum of understanding that will stay open for signature by other members. We'll have a first meeting in the autumn, and you can contact either the IEA or us at the European Commission Director General for Energy for further details and participation. In this launch event, we have two partners in principle, one with port representatives and one with international organizations. I'll introduce them all one by one, but now I'm extremely pleased to start the meeting and give the floor for the official launch to the EU Commissioner for Energy, Commissioner Kadri Simpson. So, Commissioner, please, the floor is yours. The microphone.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to kick off the launch of the Global Ports Coalition today. The rise of hydrogen as an energy carrier can deeply transform our energy systems, and ports in Europe and around the world can be key drivers and beneficiaries of this transformation. The European Union is committed to embrace and drive the clean energy revolution. The European Green Deal sets a clear direction. We want to reach a 55% reduction in emissions by 2030 and become a carbon neutral continent by 2050. Hydrogen is essential to achieve these targets, and it is also an opportunity to create growth and promote innovation for the post-COVID recovery. The EU has set its vision on hydrogen in the hydrogen strategy of July 2020. And we aim at having 6 gigawatts of renewable hydrogen electrolyzers installed by 2024 and 40 gigawatts by 2030. This strategy is also an investment agenda. At EU level, we are expecting investments in the range of 320 to 460 billion euros by 2030. That's why we are mobilizing the firepower of the EU Recovery and Resilience Facility to back up our strategic objectives. 37% of the expenditure will be invested in projects for the green transition, and several member states have chosen to invest part of their funds in renewable hydrogen projects. The EU hydrogen strategy is starting to show results already. We have launched the first call to develop 100 megawatt renewable hydrogen electrolyzers. We have proposed a clean hydrogen partnership with a budget of 1 billion euros over the next 6 years. And we have launched the first EU Innovation Fund call to finance innovative projects, including hydrogen. On infrastructure, last December, we proposed a new regulation on trans-European networks to support investment also in dedicated hydrogen infrastructure, whether new or by repurposing the existing natural gas transmission pipelines. And we have set up an EU Hydrogen Alliance, a public-private partnership to define a project pipeline of hydrogen projects in Europe. And we have received more than 1,000 proposals, and the first overview will be presented already in June. We have also developed the taxonomy for sustainable investments, which includes a CO2 threshold on what can be defined as sustainable hydrogen. And finally, in July, we will present our Fit for 55 package, presenting concrete legislative proposals on renewable energies, taxation and emission trading. And later in the year, the natural gas legislation will also be revised. Through these legislative initiatives, we will set a new regulatory framework to incentivize hydrogen deployment. In all our scenarios, Europe will remain an open energy market where hydrogen is produced domestically, but also imported and exported. And that's why developing a global rules-based market, including common standards, safety and certification, is central in our approach. Against this background, we see a new set of opportunities emerging for ports. The scale-up of hydrogen at ports will help address local port emissions, support the deployment of hydrogen as a marine fuel, and provide new opportunities for LNG terminals. In particular, ports connect production and demand of hydrogen. Their proximity to offshore wind and solar PV production sites makes them a suitable place for the production of renewable hydrogen. And the coastal industrial hubs located near ports can use hydrogen to decarbonize their industrial processes, and port facilities allow the transport of hydrogen by ships. In the future, ports can also facilitate the fueling of ships with hydrogen, helping to decarbonize the maritime sector. There are endless opportunities to be grasped, but this requires scale and collaboration. And that's why the Global Ports Coalition is so important. The coalition can help encourage ports to invest more in renewable hydrogen, also strengthen cooperation and share knowledge to support ports in their efforts to deploy renewable and low carbon hydrogen, and identify bottlenecks and potential solutions to discuss with policymakers. Yet there are still areas where we need to have a better understanding of the role ports can play. For instance, we need further reflection on how to further reduce production and logistics costs, which carrier is the most cost and energy efficient or safer, and how to increase production volumes fast enough, and how to build a large and stable market. So opportunities are there, but there is a lot of work to do. I truly believe we need a global network to mobilize and support ports in their endeavor to scale up hydrogen. And I very much appreciate the direct engagement of the CEOs of ports participating today, showing the commitment to upscaling renewable hydrogen at the highest level. And you are leading the way. And I hope other ports will join in the near future. The European Commission wants to be a partner for your plans in Europe and also at the global level. We will lend all our support to the work of the Clean Energy Ministerial, including the Hydrogen Initiative and its ports coalition. And together, we can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner. And thank you for your presence and for your encouragement and support to this initiative. Now we'll continue with the program. I have opportunity to excuse Minister Gloria Hart, who was actually it's not possible to attend to a last-minute call with the President. However, I would like to introduce a pre-recorded intervention of Minister Seamus O'Regan from Canada, a country which is co-leading with us also the Hydrogen Initiative. So, please.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Je vous rejoins depuis l'île de Terre-Neuve, le territoire ancestral des peuples Mi'kmaq et Beothuk. I'm Seamus O'Regan. I'm Canada's Minister of Natural Resources, and I want to thank you for joining this event. It's an exciting one that I am personally very excited about. Let me start by thanking all of those involved in the Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition. Canada understands the importance of the marine sector. We've got the largest coastline in the world. I see it every day. My office looks out towards St. John's Harbor, and there is a constant flow of supply ships and container vessels that come in and out of here. Shipping powers our global economy. It's responsible for 80% of all international trade. But with every ship that transports goods, emissions come with it. In fact, more than 1 billion tons of greenhouse gas emissions every year. And sometimes those ships are emitting when they're not even moving products to market, as we saw with the backlog created by the Ever Given in the Suez. If shipping were a country, it would be the 6th most polluting country in the world. What's worse, those emissions are expected to grow 50% by 2050 compared to 2018 levels. So that is where low carbon fuels come in, like hydrogen. The world is charting its path to net zero, and hydrogen is a critical part of that path. And that's an opportunity for our ports and for our marine sector. In 2019, Canada launched the Clean Energy Ministerial Hydrogen Initiative to increase international collaboration and to encourage greater deployment of hydrogen in these areas that simply must be part of a broader hydrogen strategy. Because the average ship lasts 30 to 50 years. So time's not on our side. We need to act now if we're going to bend the curve and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Canada agrees with the International Energy Agency. Industrial ports have to be the nerve centers for scaling up the use of clean hydrogen. So we welcome this coalition. Around the world, many are taking up the challenge of using hydrogen in the shipping industry. Coastal nations like the Netherlands, Norway, Germany, Spain, Japan, the UK, they're already investing in hydrogen-powered fleets and infrastructure, including cargo handling for container ships. Belgium even has a hydrogen-powered passenger ferry. And while many of these are powered by fuel cells designed and built in Canada, we can't be left behind in deploying these same technologies here at home. Canada will lead. We see tremendous opportunities to use hydrogen in our ferries, tugs, and fishing vessels. These smaller vessels they're a great proving ground for technologies before we scale up to larger merchant vessels. These things won't happen overnight, but they will happen over time if we make them happen with new ships, new engines, and a new fuel. More broadly, our government understands the potential for hydrogen in our green energy future. We launched our hydrogen strategy for Canada in December with an ambitious goal to make Canada a top 3 producer of clean hydrogen. And Canada's ports on both sides of our country are natural places to begin, both as early deployment hubs, but also as a gateway to supply the world with low-cost, low-carbon hydrogen produced in Canada. So what's next? What steps do we take now as governments and as an industry? Finding these answers, that's what the Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition is all about. The hydrogen strategy for Canada is clear. Strategic partnerships and international collaboration are critical if we're to capitalize on the economic and environmental opportunities that hydrogen presents. So with that in mind, I look forward to working with all of my colleagues, including Canadian cities like Vancouver and Montreal, as we drive hydrogen into the maritime sector as never before, and ensure that all of our coastal regions benefit from the coming revolution in hydrogen. Hydrogen will help us get to net zero, and we need to capitalize on this opportunity. It's going to help us in our common mission, net zero emissions by 2050, a prosperous global economy that creates jobs, 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 and a low emissions future that leaves no one behind. I know that's a lot. It's ambitious. But you know what? The world is demanding that kind of ambition. And you're answering the call. Thank you. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. I would like to ask my Canadian colleagues and counterparts to thank the Minister for also his support and the very good presentation of the Canadian perspective on this coalition and the whole support to the CEM hydrogen initiative. Now, would like now to move on, and as I mentioned before, we have two panels, and the first panel is about bringing together a number of ports, of course limited, and would have loved to have more, but they are with us, and as I said before, they'll sign the MOU, and many more will join. But a couple of ports will come now to present their views about the role that hydrogen can play in decarbonizing their activities and the added value of this coalition and the international cooperation for their plans. So this being said, I would like to start with the Port of Rotterdam. Unfortunately, Mr. Art Kastelein, the CEO, is not available again last minute, but it's very good that we have Mr. Wilco van der Lans, who is the Business Development Manager of the Port of Rotterdam with us, and I give you, Wilco, the floor, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tudor, for your introduction. Yeah, for me, it's an honor to present our vision of the port and the role of ports in the hydrogen economy, and the role of this, specifically this coalition, of course. But let's first start with the role of hydrogen in ports. Hydrogen will play a pivotal role in decarbonizing port activities. And I want to stress that, vice versa, ports will also play an essential role in the development of hydrogen economy. Allow me to explain this a bit. Rotterdam is the largest European port, a hub that combines maritime, logistics, and industrial activities, especially petrochemicals. And in order to progress with the Paris Climate Agreement, we've taken the view not to dismiss this fossil industry, but to help them making this transition towards clean processes and equipments. Let's not forget that our economy relies on these enterprises as well. Hydrogen is a core component of the new energy system. It's the energy carrier of the future and will be used in industries as a raw material and fuel. But it will also find its way as a fuel for the shipping sector, maybe in the form of pure hydrogen or other forms like ammonia or methanol. And in order to stimulate this development, we as a port have initiated to develop open access hydrogen infrastructure across the whole port to bring clients and production together. And we also are progressing with a dedicated area where electrolyzers produce carbon-free hydrogen based on the advantages of having the North Sea close beside us, where clean power will be produced from offshore wind farms. This will help against climate change, attracts new industries, and thus creates societal benefits. But we all know that Rotterdam and Northwestern Europe will not be able to produce the volume of all that hydrogen that's necessary to completely decarbonize. So we need also import of hydrogen from other regions where there is a surplus of renewable energy potential. And that's why we as a port also are looking to other areas where we can develop together the hydrogen economy as well. We are building new trade corridors and value chains, and we have partnerships with several ports all around the world. A few of them are, for instance, Portugal, Morocco, Oman, Canada, Chile, Uruguay, Namibia, and Brazil. It's not only with the governments, but also with the ports and other players in that value chain. This is how hydrogen and ports are a key combination for security of supply of that new energy flows. And let's come back to the added value of this coalition. Since the hydrogen economy will have an impact on the whole energy ecosystem, and it will have a huge impact on economic and societal impact. For us, collaboration and information exchange are key success factors, building a new future. The partnerships already mentioned stress that we are already started to collaborate with several of you. The energy transition requires innovation, startups and scale-ups, demonstration projects, but also new business models and new regulation. And one of them is for sure is the setup of a clear certification system together with government. So I like also this combination with governments and ports and industry working together. So let's not try to invent the wheel every time again and as individual ports organizations and governments, but work together, sharing successes and learnings to make every day a new step. That's why Rotterdam supports this coalition.
Thank you very much, Vilkos. Thank you for showing us your plan, but also underlining the importance of this cooperation between governments, local authorities, and ports. Now, I would like to move to the next intervention, which is a Port of Doom. I'm very pleased to introduce Guy Vermeulen, the CEO. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon. Well, in the position of the Port of Duqm, a bit on the counterpart of the Port of Rotterdam, we are more in the area of the export. Oman, Port of Duqm, be located in Oman and the latest port in the development of the country. We are actually able to combine an area with a very high wind potential, very big sun potential, access to the sea, and a sufficient reserve of land for this development. So what we're doing in collaboration with our partner in Europe, which in this case is the Port of Antwerp, where we are setting up a bridge where we'll be producing hydrogen within the limits of the port, being able to transform it into ammonia, as it will be the initial carrier of the green hydrogen, and export it towards Europe. So we are also extremely excited about this coalition. We are being more on the production area and export area, and working very closely with European ports, Asian ports, and American ports to be able to be them as a receiving port for our hydrogen. In addition to that, we're aiming being able to have already in the pipeline 3 major hydrogen projects. One of them is already in FEED stage, with a target to have a first production of around 250 to 500 megawatts by the horizon 2025. This is something that is really around the corner, and we're extremely excited of this new development. And we're going to transition not only for the export of ammonia and the later stage hydrogen, but also gearing up to be, as mentioned several times, a potential regional hub for the bunkering of hydrogen for the next generation of ships. So thank you very much, and Port of Duqm is extremely excited to start this journey all together. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much too, and thank you for pointing also to the opportunities for other renewable fuels and for other energy carriers to which we can encourage and support and benefit of international trade in renewable hydrogen. Now, next presentation, I'm pleased to introduce the Commercial Director of the Port of Pecém. So, Duna Uribe, please.
Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Who knows where people might be watching us. It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And I am Duna Uribe. I'm the commercial director of PESEM. And you might wonder, where is PESEM? What is PESEM like? So let me tell you a little bit about this. So PESEM is located in the northeast of Brazil. It is a growing port, and it has already industry set up. It's quite a relatively young port. It started operations in 2002, and it has industries such as cement, power industries, power plants, steel making, and wind blade manufacturing, amongst others. We have also an export processing zone. And since 2018, we have the pleasure of having the Port of Rotterdam as a shareholder, as a minority shareholder with 30% of the shares, together with the government of Ceará. So this link with the Port of Rotterdam, combined with what Wilco said as its strategy, together with the large availability of solar capacity and wind, both onshore and offshore, off the coast of Ceará, where PESEM is located, really makes PESEM an ideal location for production of green hydrogen. That being said, in February of this year, the governor of the state launched an initiative to have PESEM Hub, Green Hydrogen Hub. And this is a launch together with the Federation of Industry, so the private sector, the state government, public sector, the academia, as well as the port. So it really shows how we think of green hydrogen as a multidisciplinary approach. I'm really excited to be here because it really shows and combines private and public side of the spectrum. Both are needed. There is a lot to be still surveyed, still identified, and still decided on this exciting field. And the hub that we have in PESEM, the ambition that we have is to have a cluster of activities with an ambition of 5 gigawatts for the production and to have for local consumption as well as for the export function. And we believe that the role of green hydrogen will help the port decarbonize the industries that are located in PESEM, but also vessels, the shipping, as it was discussed here earlier as well, very important, as well as equipment, port equipment, warehousing equipment could also benefit from this transition. So there are a lot of uses, both locally and for exports, that we aim to have. And I believe the added value that this coalition brings is the main word is collaboration, is the fact that many people and many players, important players, international players are coming together, sharing expertise, sharing their ambitions, sharing their technology. And we need that in order to really make it happen and make this transition happen. So check us out on social media, on LinkedIn, on our website. PESEM is a growing port, and it will definitely have a major role for green hydrogen globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for an interesting presentation. Thank you for pointing out already to aspects of energy system integration, how we call them, which are essential to make hydrogen an effective energy carrier for decarbonizing ports, but also maritime and also industrial activities. So this is really what we aim for. So thank you again. And now I move to the next presentation. And now is the Port of Houston. I'm extremely pleased. The Executive Director, Roger Günther, is with us. So Roger, very pleased to introduce you. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you for that introduction, Tudor. And with just a few minutes to speak, I'd like to focus on two of our main challenges today, the health of our economy and the health of our environment. And one won't last long without the other. And sustainability is the common theme. Here in Texas and in Houston, you can't go far without getting into a discussion about the future of energy. And as the Executive Director of Port Houston, I'm happy to be representing our port at this launch of the Global Hydrogen Ports Coalition. Now, every port's different. So let me describe briefly how it works here. We are the public port authority. We operate public terminals that serve over 140 million consumers within 1,000 miles, but we're also the local sponsor for the Houston Ship Channel, which is the busiest waterway in our country and serves one of the largest petrochemical complexes in the world. It's a busy place with hundreds of trucks, hundreds of terminals and pipelines, and thousands of ships calling our port every year. So hydrogen is already a core aspect of our petrochemical value chain here. So it's natural to see Houston as a place where future uses and technologies and supplies will continue to develop. Our port users are all part of a greater global ecosystem, and by extension, we're on that world stage and need to step up in that role. At the same time, we need to act locally as well to support the people in our area. And we've done that. We've reduced our carbon footprint here on things like 100% renewable energy and other changes. However, the global climate crisis and the energy transition are much bigger than we are here. Industry partners are also focused on their own for the sustainability and the climate related goals. So our ports are critical connection points in all of this. We have to engage with all of our stakeholders with big ideas as we move forward to collectively achieve our goals. Our port is engaging in local stakeholders with stakeholders to explore sustainability further. In fact, this week we have a series of workshops with our sustainability action teams with members of our community, from the community to all of the users of our channel. So it's a very important ongoing process. So all of these ideas create real impact on our economy and on our environment. And Port Houston is committed to be a part of this dialogue and support real positive change. And we're glad to join this Hydrogen Ports Coalition because so many topics are moving so fast, and all of these need to benefit from sharing ideas across the world. So thanks for listening, and thanks for allowing us to be a part of this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Roger. And thank you very much for pointing indeed to this very important aspect of the contribution ports can have for the local communities, for the cities, for the people in that area, in that region, but at the same time to the global trade, international trade in renewable hydrogen and decarbonizing across the world and having renewables actually exported across the world. So thank you indeed very much for that, and happy if you can stay with us. Now we have two more pre-recorded interventions, and I would like to introduce these two pre-recorded interventions. They are from Federico Spieles, who is the president of the port of Bahia Blanca, and the next one is from José Sáenz, the CEO of the port of Meones. So please, if we could have the two interventions.
El puerto de Bahía Blanca es realmente un orgullo representar a la Argentina en este grupo de trabajo que tiene por objetivo reducir la emisión de combustibles fósiles, reconociendo al hidrógeno como uno de los grandes valores en esta línea hacia el futuro. Nuestro puerto es un puerto en el cual contiene diversas formas de energía, pasan oleoductos, poliductos, tenemos una gran generación de energía eólica y también una gran factibilidad de energía solar, y bueno, no tenemos ninguna duda que el tránsito y el camino hacia la producción y al almacenamiento de hidrógeno es buena parte del futuro, de la sustentabilidad y de la sostenibilidad que queremos construir en nuestro puerto y en el mundo.
My name is José Sáenz, CEO of Puerto Mejillones, a specialized liquid and solid bulk terminal part of the Ultramar Group. We understand that caring for the planet represents a global challenge. We want to contribute from our reality, mitigating our environmental impacts, identifying opportunities to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and promote a cultural change towards more sustainable operations. From this perspective, we aspire to be a trusted logistic partner for companies that produce and export green hydrogen and its byproducts.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the organizers for giving us the opportunity to also listen to these two pre-recorded reports. I think we could now have the opportunity to have the first panel back on stage. I think we have learned and listened to very interesting presentations. Does this work? Hello? Okay, I start to be reassured. I see Wilco having. Again, glad to see you back. I was just worried that maybe the internet connection collapsed, so I was, oh no.
Now we're here.
Yeah, no, we are all here, and thank you again for a great presentation. I think we have just 3 minutes. Just if it is to ask you to take advantage of this before we taking the photo, because we managed to thank you to get extra 3 minutes. In 30 seconds or so, what would be the first thing you'd expect to see under this coalition and the work we are going to start in the autumn? To look at how to decarbonize port activities, to look at the export infrastructure, import infrastructure, the industrial cluster in proximity, the renewable plants which could be built next to the ports. What would be your first priority you'd like us to start discussing, please?
Yeah, for me, I think the certifications issue is really important.
Excellent.
It takes a long time to get a system in place, but let's start with a system.
Thank you very much. Work is not only at European level, but also with the International Partnership for Hydrogen Economy. So it's really a proof, and we have some work on this in the Clean Energy Ministerial. So it's good synergy at international level as well. So, Duna, what is for you, please?
Port infrastructure, Mr. Tudor. I think it would be good to share insights into what kind of port infrastructures do we need, what adaptations are needed. So what do we need as port authorities to facilitate in order to be sure that there will be green hydrogen shipping very soon through our ports?
Thank you very much. Reggie?
I can only echo what had been said. One more thing that's interesting, I think, is that we see a lot of new projects that are starting, and they're really focusing on the production side of it, but there's very few big initiatives on the transport side. And I think this coalition could allow us to take a driving seat on the transport of hydrogen and the different carriers. And by doing that, we'll facilitate the life of all these investors that are producing the hydrogen and the receiving end. And on the end, we'll give a lot of credibility for the first mover. So I'm really excited to be able to offer to the industrial companies making the production a framework to be able to transport a hydrogen.
Okay.
So we could extend it not only to the port, but also to the transporter of this world.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Roger, one other word on your priority.
I think the important thing is to collaborate, sessions like this, but also collaboration on a local level. There's so many things happening so quickly, a lot of innovations. Being in an energy capital, port, it's very important for us to take the lead. And it's been framed as we kind of have to be the glue to bring people together to make sure this happens, because it's very important for decarbonization. So looking forward to continue to moving in a positive direction.
Okay, thank you very much. So now you have all on the stage, on the panel. And I guess we can also now move to the next panel. Thank you again to all of you for your contributions, for your encouragement, and for your commitment, first of all. Now to work together. I would like now to move to the next session, and this next panel, which is bringing together a number of international organizations that will discuss what they can do, how they can support ports, how they see the progress in technology, but not only, and how can mobilize their efforts together with the ports to support hydrogen becoming what we aim to have it as a bridge in the energy transition and that's an important enabler for decarbonization. So first, it's my pleasure to introduce Timur Gul, who is the head of the Energy Technology Policy Division in the International Energy Agency. Thank you, Tim, for being with us today, and thank you, of course, for all the support in setting up this initiative.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tudor, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are, dear guests, distinguished guests, dear colleagues. Warm greetings from Paris. I want to start off by expressing my sincere gratitude to Chile for hosting such an excellent Clean Energy Ministerial meeting, and of course the fabulous team of the CEM Secretariat for all its excellent work in making all these events happen. It's an incredible achievement already in normal times, and under these still challenging circumstances, it is even more impressive. Our colleagues at the European Commission and Tudor Constantinescu in particular, I would like to thank very much for the excellent collaboration in launching this global ports hydrogen coalition. Many colleagues from the IEA, from the CEM Secretariat, put a lot of work into making this happen, but really without your leadership, Tudor, this wouldn't have happened. So big congratulations to you personally here as well. Now, let me start off by saying that just very recently, on the 18th of May, the International Energy Agency presented the most comprehensive and detailed roadmap that lays out what achieving net zero emissions from the energy sector by the year 2050 means in practice. We identified more than 400 individual milestones that describe such a transition to clean energies, and the messages, there are many messages in the report, of course, but if you want to break it down a little about what is important in the near term, then we showed in the report that the 2020s, on the one hand, must be the decade of massive clean energy deployment, scaling up the technologies that we already have in the market, from renewables to energy efficiency, from energy efficiency to electric vehicles. We have the technologies in our hands to bring down emissions decisively over the next 10 years. At the same time, we need to accelerate innovation in the next generation of clean energy technologies. Some of them are at very early stages of deployment. Others are still at demonstration or at prototype stage, and many hydrogen categories, actually hydrogen technologies, actually fall in these type of categories. Hydrogen, as we all know, is a critical enabler of a transition to net zero emissions. It can be practically used in all parts of the energy system, but most importantly, I think, for transition to net zero emissions, it can help decarbonize heavy industries, it can help decarbonize long distance transport, and of course, it can be an important source of flexibility to integrate renewables for power generation. In our roadmap to net zero emissions by 2050, the use of low carbon hydrogen grows by a factor of 6 over today's levels to the year 2050. But with all this potential that hydrogen has, you need to start somewhere. You can't start everywhere. It is just too many possible areas in which hydrogen could be playing a role. And one of the IEA's key recommendations to the G20 as part of our landmark report, The Future of Hydrogen in 2019, was to make ports the nerve centers for scaling up the use of low carbon and clean hydrogen. Why? Because coastal industrial hubs concentrate much of today's hydrogen production and demand. They can connect national markets, and they can facilitate the use of hydrogen to fuel ships, to fuel trucks that are going in and off the ports, while powering nearby industrial facilities, chemical industries, steel plants, and so on. We are therefore very pleased to see that this Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition puts this IEA recommendation into action. It is an important step to unleash the potential of ports to scale up low carbon hydrogen supply and demand. And from our perspective, the coalition will provide a unique platform to establish collaborations between port authorities, national policymakers, and other stakeholders that can help accelerating the adoption of hydrogen technologies across ports. At the IEA, we will keep monitoring and tracking progress on the different production and uses of hydrogen. This year, we will release for the very first time the Global Hydrogen Review, a report that will look at on-the-ground progress and compare it with stated government ambitions and the needs for transition to net zero emissions in order to help fine-tune government and industry progress. And of course, as part of this work, we will closely follow the progress of this Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition. We will also keep supporting international initiatives. In particular, we look forward to working with Japan on this year's Hydrogen Energy Ministerial, and we will work in close collaboration with related industries, with governments, to identify their very own opportunity for hydrogen to make rhetoric be put into action. The IEA, as the coordinator of this CEM hydrogen initiative, is very pleased to see the huge interest from governments and ports to work together to scale up low carbon hydrogen supply and demand. And we sincerely wish this Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition a very successful start. Thank you, and back to you, Tudor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Timur, and thank you again for all the support in setting up this coalition, to you, but also to your colleagues, to Jose in particular, Bermudez, to Per Anders, to set up this coalition, and for all the work done and for the future work which expects us in the autumn. So now, with this being said, I would like to introduce the Executive Director of the Hydrogen Council. So Derry Wilson, please, the floor is yours.
Good day, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to participate in this very encouraging session. This initiative for ports really gets at the essence of what hydrogen can do. Hydrogen is an energy vector that integrates many energy applications in a way that our current energy systems cannot. Hydrogen offers an opportunity of integrating more renewable energy, of decarbonizing hard to decarbonize sectors, of contributing to the decarbonization of transport. But with the Ports Initiative, all of these things come together in one place. And the ability to see that integration in our energy system is what this new initiative, the Ports Initiative, opens up. And seeing, of course, is believing. And so from the Hydrogen Council, a coalition of more than 100 industrial leaders around the world who've been working now for 5 years to advance energy applications in hydrogen, we are very encouraged with this initiative, because indeed it gives the opportunity of seeing the essence of what hydrogen brings to our society. And so we would compliment those who have made the recommendation of the IEA and those who have taken up the challenge within the CEM and all of these ports that have given witness today of this opportunity. It's a very encouraging day indeed. Whenever we talk about hydrogen within industry, safety is always the highest and first priority. And so I want to emphasize at the start of this initiative a contribution that the Hydrogen Council can make in advancing the harmonization and extension of the standards that we have for hydrogen safety around the world. Indeed, hydrogen has been used for many years in a very safe manner in industry, and you will not see a long history of accidents and incidents with hydrogen because of the stewardship and the care that has been placed by industry over many, many years over a wide spectrum of industrial applications. But today in this initiative, and as we move forward with hydrogen in energy applications, there is new territory. We are putting hydrogen in places it hasn't been before. We are scaling up to levels that we have not seen before. And so within the Hydrogen Council, we have shared an initiative to look at the codes and standards that we have today from an industrial point of view, and then identify where those codes and standards need to be advanced and further developed so that these new energy applications in new places and at new scale can indeed be delivered in a safe manner. And we'll be working with a number of agencies around the world which share this mission, notably the ISO panels. There are numerous panels convened already to look at many detailed aspects of hydrogen safety. And I just wanted, in this occasion, to emphasize the very high priority that all of us, I know, place on this important topic. The other thing that the Ports Initiative does is highlights that none of us are in this alone. Ports connect the world, they connect trade. And so it's very important as we continue to progress the applications in hydrogen energy that we have a level playing field, that we have a common understanding, that we have ways of work together and language and taxonomy and communications which are harmonized and clear around the world, not just for safety, but for trade and many other aspects as well. We've been working with the IPHE, the International Program on Hydrogen Energy, which is an intergovernmental panel looking at these kind of shared global issues. And they have been looking at the matter of guarantees of origin. So as we look at the migration of hydrogen energy and the movement of renewable assets around the world in the form of hydrogen, what do we know about those from a carbon footprint point of view? How do we account for the attributes, the environmental attributes of this new energy carrier that we'll be adopting in greater and greater amounts? And so these kind of international cooperative efforts are very, very important. And the Ports Initiative actually activates the need and highlights the desire from many places around the world to work together indeed and have a set of standards and a system and a management approach which is easy and straightforward to everybody, for everyone to participate on a level playing field. So I'm very, very encouraged about this initiative and what it can do to make the essence of hydrogen clear, to make sure that we continue to work on the important topic of safety and to advance and harmonize the critical codes and standards for environmental attributes and decarbonization of hydrogen. So thank you for the opportunity to share some comments on this very important day and the kickoff of the Ports Initiative.
Thank you very much, Daryl, and thank you very much for bringing the issue of safety on the agenda. Is indeed and remains important, in particular with the scaling up and the new applications, as you have mentioned. Now, I would like to move to the next intervention we have from the International Association for Harbors and Ports, and very pleased to have with us the Managing Director, Patrick Verhoeven. Please, Patrick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tudor, and good day to all of you from Antwerp, Belgium. Thank you very much for the invitation to join this panel and the launch of this coalition. I think it's been said in many interventions, ports have two roles when we talk about alternative fuels such as hydrogen. One, of course, is handling it as an energy commodity, and the other is to provide it as a fuel to shipping and possible other industries. And it's indeed from that dual role that ports can help building an integrated approach on the deployment of hydrogen and its derivative fuels, as is actually stated very clearly in the program of this Global Ports Coalition. If we look specifically at the provision of hydrogen as a fuel for shipping and possible other industries, the role of ports is again a double one. It's to ensure, of course, that infrastructure is in place, bunkering infrastructure, but at the same time, it is important that the proper procedures are there also for the safe and efficient bunkering of these fuels. The provision of bunkering infrastructure is no doubt the most complex aspect because that's where substantial investments are required. And ports would indeed need to look for partnerships and for overall applications of hydrogen and its derivatives, not just as a fuel for vessels, but also for trucks, for cargo handling, for logistics, and for industrial in industrial contexts where ports have that. And not every port has industrial facilities, but some do. And in that sense, of course, the synergies are higher. What we notice in our network, so we've got about 160 ports that are members of our organization. We notice that quite a few ports are now in the phase of pilot projects and testing. And that's why a coalition like this, of course, is extremely helpful, that we have the front runners, the leading ports getting together
and share that experience. What is equally important is to have connected networks of ports offering hydrogen bunkering facilities on the main shipping route. So cooperation between the main bunkering ports is actually equally important. That's infrastructure side. If we look at procedures, bunkering procedures and safety procedures notably, I think things may be a little bit easier, if I can use that word, because we can rely there already on existing experience that a lot of ports had with LNG bunkering. And our organization has, for instance, produced an extensive toolbox which outlines applicable safety procedures for bunkering, and which is a resource that is freely available to all ports. And we're adapting that now to fuels like hydrogen and its derivatives. So the basic knowledge and the basic know-how is actually there. It just needs to be adapted. Again, welcoming very much, as I said, this coalition of leaders and frontrunners. That's what we need in a process like this. What we can offer from IAPH is the possibility to disseminate that work of the coalition through a platform that is called the World Port Sustainability Program, where all other leaderships initiatives in energy transition are also actually present. In that way, we can engage with a broader ports community, and it would also avoid overlaps, or, if you put it positively, fill the gaps that are still existing today. Should perhaps also mention that we are a partner in the IMO Green Voyage 2050 program, where we will be organizing a series of workshops later this year on how ports can facilitate energy transition, notably of shipping. And that would also be a good platform, I think, to disseminate some of the work of this coalition. So in short, very welcome this initiative, and we're absolutely ready to support it and to amplify the output that comes out of the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patrick. Now, glad if we can have the three panelists on the stage. So thank you very much, Timur. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Daryl. We don't have much time left, so we are a bit under time pressure. But if you can say just in 15 seconds each, in one word, what would you say would be the priority for the first meeting of the coalition? What should we look from your perspective at, as the port said before? But really, in one word, what would be the top priority for you to start with?
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure. Okay. Daryl?
Application identification. Once you're clear on what you're trying to do and what applications you're trying to integrate, then the rest of the key questions start to become apparent.
Thank you. And Timur? Microphone.
Establish exchange platform, communication platform among the ports and with governments. That would be my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much to all excellent interventions, and clear that there are a lot of synergies to exploit here. And now I move to the concluding part of this event, and I'm very pleased to introduce our Director General for Energy of the European Commission, Mr. Dieter Juul-Jorgensen. So Dieter, the floor is yours.
Tudor, and thank you very much everyone for the opportunity to join you here at the close of the launch of the Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition. I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm happy to be here with you because your presence and the Memorandum of Understanding really show that there is a clear commitment to work together and make progress on hydrogen and the role, and recognizing the role of ports in that context. I very much welcome that. And we have heard during this meeting many messages of support for the coalition. We all seem to agree that we can help link in the different parts of the system between the development of green hydrogen infrastructure and ports and our energy policy ambitions and planning. I think it was particularly useful to hear firsthand from the CEOs of port authorities and how they detailed their concrete projects to decarbonize activities in their respective ports. That's something we can all learn from and try to emulate in the future. We've also discussed the opportunities for scaling up green hydrogen across the globe and the role that ports can play and have to play in that process. And I would like to thank the International Energy Agency, Hydrogen Council and International Association for Harbours and Ports for their very useful and interesting input on that specific issue. But of course, it's a launch event. I'd that's only the beginning. We are confident that many other ports will be joining the initiative, building the necessary network to advance on green hydrogen decarbonization together. I would like to say just very few words about upcoming European Union activities that can complement what our Commissioner, Kadri Simpson, said earlier today. First of all, in order to provide clarity and certainty for industry and investors, we are working on some relevant initiatives and regulatory proposals that will be tabled this year as part of our overall move to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030. We will put forward a proposal for relating to certification and incentives for hydrogen as part of the revision of the Renewable Energy Directive, which is scheduled already for this summer. And then we're looking at the market rules, what's the best design of a competitive market for decarbonized gases and hydrogen, and that will be part of a wider package towards the end of the year. Now, these initiatives in the field of energy legislation will, of course, be complemented by other initiatives in the field of competition rules, state aid policy, taxation, and alternative fuels infrastructure, and of course also the Emissions Trading Directive, which is under revision as part of this Fit for 55 package this summer. I believe that this new legislative framework with certification, standards, market rules to support hydrogen and more will be really important to provide a clear sense of the direction to port authorities investing in green hydrogen, both within the European Union and beyond. We need to see global markets and ports are instrumental in that context. And finally, I would just like to briefly recall another two initiatives that show our commitments to ports and the role of ports in hydrogen. Last year, we published a green call on green airports and ports, which included clean hydrogen-related demonstration project. The call has €100 million budget with 15 to 25 million per proposal. And winners of the call will be announced in the coming weeks. And this year, together with the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, we intend to launch a study to identify challenges and opportunities to develop hydrogen in the European Union ports, and in consideration, of course, also of less advanced ports. The findings here will feed into the discussion in the Global Ports Coalition as well. So our overall objective is to put in place the right framework for the green hydrogen market and infrastructure to develop that both at European level, but of course also worldwide. And your support in the Global Ports Hydrogen Coalition is instrumental here. By working together, we can make sure that it provides value-added support for ports in the international context. And for this reason, we're already working with the International Energy Agency to organize the first meeting of the coalition already now in September. So with that, I would like to thank all participants for mobilizing and for joining, for your efforts to sustain and build up the coalition. We will support you in this endeavor to contribute to the energy transition, and I very much look forward to our continued cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dieter. And with this, we are approaching the end of our launching event. All the support you indicated will be certainly very valuable for the future work of the coalition. We had really good presentation. I would like to thank to all participants. And it was one slide indicating the first signatories of this coalition, the 29 I have mentioned in the very beginning. But this stays open. Please contact the IEA or us, the Commission and the Director General for Energy. And we will also keep you informed about the launch of the work of the coalition in September. So with this, I think we can conclude this event almost in time. And I would like to thank again also to the CEM Secretariat, to the IEA Secretariat, to all who were operational in setting this up, and looking forward to our joint cooperation and activities in the near future. Thank you, and have a very nice CEM Ministerial for the next days.
Brilliant. Thank you. Huge thanks and congratulations to all involved in the launch of the new Hydrogen Ports Coalition. The coalition has already clearly acquired critical mass, and now we want to see it to go to massive scale. We're very proud of the CEM's hydrogen initiative and are now equally proud to see the launch of the Global Ports Coalition as part of it. We're going to take a break now for a few minutes, and at 20 past the hour European time, so 5 minutes from now, we'll be launching our third event today, which is the Empowering People Initiative. So please do stay with us for that. Thank you. Welcome everyone to this third launch event, and this is a launch event of the CEM's Empowering People Initiative, a topic very dear to my heart. We had calls for such a work stream at our 11th Clean Energy Ministerial meeting last year, and so I'm really thrilled that we're here today to see it launched at CEM 12. There is definitely a greater need to focus on the important socio-economic aspects of clean energy transitions, the need to engage and empower citizens, consumers and communities. We need both the technical solutions for these transitions and the public support to see them achieved. Ultimately, they will not be achieved just with 200 national governments or with thousands of companies, but it will take literally several billion people to ensure that we achieve net zero. Now, with that, it's my pleasure to hand over to Wendy, our chair for this launch event of the CEM's new Empowering People Initiative, co-led by Canada, the European Commission and the United States. But Wendy, over to you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here today, and welcome to everyone from around the world. My name's Wendy Sukier, and I'm the director of the Diversity Institute at Ryerson University in Toronto. And I wish to say that all of us from Canada are joining you from the traditional lands of Indigenous peoples. And for example, Toronto, for thousands of years was the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat people, and more recently, the Mississauga of the Credit River. It still is home to many Indigenous people, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to live and work here. It's important to us, particularly today more than ever, to acknowledge the traditional lands of Indigenous people and also to recognize the many harms and horrors that we have inflicted upon them. We pledge to work together in the spirit of reconciliation to drive real change. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm very pleased to welcome to the virtual stage the Honorable Seamus O'Regan, who is the Minister of Natural Resources of Canada, the Honorable Nicholas Schmidt, who is the European Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights, and Dave Turk, Deputy Secretary of the US Department of Energy. Welcome, everybody. It's wonderful to have you all here today. My first question is for you, Minister O'Regan. It's great to see you. So Canada has consistently emphasized the importance of this people-centered transition as part of its plan for net zero. Can you explain why it's important for Canada and the CEM community to be thinking of energy transition in this way?
Thank you very much, Dr. Sukier. Good to see you. As a not quite an alumna of alumnus of Ryerson University, but somebody who spent a lot of time there. It's good to see you again. And just to mention that I am on the traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk peoples. And this is my great passion. So I am delighted to join you. I'm delighted to join Commissioner Schmidt and Deputy Secretary Turk. Look, it's important because people are important. Because greater diversity and gender equality in the energy sector isn't just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Countries around the world are increasing their climate ambition, and Canada is amongst them. And much of the focus has been on the technologies that we need, the investments we'll require, the innovations we should adopt. But a huge piece of that conversation cannot get lost, and that's people, the workers. I don't believe that there's been enough emphasis placed on the workforces that we'll need and the skills that we'll require and the barriers that they will face. You know, we talk about stranded assets, but sometimes we overlook at stranding people. And they're our most important asset. We can't leave them behind. Who do we think is going to build a low emission future? Who do we think is going to do it? We can't leave them behind. We need their expertise. We need their experience. It's a lot of complex engineering. There are only so many people who know how to do it. There are only so many people who know how to build it.
And the Empowering People initiative is about shifting the conversation to focus on people. It's about recognizing the opportunities that lie in the transition to a clean energy future, opportunities to harness the ingenuity, the know-how, the entrepreneurial spirit of workers, including our young people, opportunities to bring new technologies to market by listening to the people with the skills and the knowledge and the experience to deploy them, and opportunities to grow our economy by including those who have been long underrepresented in the workforce: women, racialized groups, indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities, and the LGBTQ2+ community. Each of our countries have our own particular needs and solutions, but each of our countries benefit from finding better ways to leverage the existing skills of workers for the new kinds of work for our clean energy future. And where those skills aren't transferable, it's up to governments to provide training so that no one's left behind. The Empowering People initiative is about developing real solutions by sharing best practices, embracing new approaches to training, working with industry, focusing on inclusive decision-making. And crucially, it's also about bringing the right people to the table, not just energy ministers, but ministers of education and training, labor, social affairs, as evidenced by Commissioner Schmidt joining us for this launch. This initiative brings on the excellent work already taking place within send through initiatives like C3E and the Equal by 30 campaign. It also adds to important social and economic dimensions to what has largely been a more technical conversation. It's an opportunity to connect with like-minded countries, with institutions, with international organizations, with NGOs, with private sector partners, to build a broader coalition for what I believe is our common mission, and that is net zero emissions by 2050, prosperous economies that continue to create good jobs, and a low carbon future that leaves no one behind. That last one is very important to me. And I believe that this initiative, it may prove to be one of the most significant ever launched by CEM, because it recognizes that our ultimate success lies not in the technology that we develop, but in the people we empower. And I look forward to working with all our partners as we undertake this together. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and music to our ears. Commissioner Schmidt, you're the European Commissioner for Jobs and Social Rights. In 2019, the EU launched a very ambitious Green Deal to reach climate neutrality by 2015. What do we need to do to make this deal socially just and fair for everyone?
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to join you. Thank you very much to the Minister also. We indeed, the European Union launched this Green Deal, and we were aware that we can only be successful with this Green Deal if we get the support by people. And this is, I think, exactly what has been said just by the Minister. And the message has to be clear. What is fair and just? First, fair and just means this transition can be a huge opportunity for everybody. It's a huge transformation of our economy in a low carbon economy, and we have ambitious goals also, reducing carbon emissions by 55% in 2030 and becoming net zero by 2050. Now, the first issue is jobs, and I think this is possible. We, in this transition, we have to create quality jobs, and we have prospects here of a creation of 2 million jobs by 2050. This means also a different kind of labor market, helping people in the transitions to jobs, and here skilling, reskilling, upskilling is extremely important. The second is to take care of communities, regions, local dimensions, because certainly they will be impacted by this Green Deal. We have to support them. We have to help them. We have to accompany the transitions economically, socially, education, training. So this is an extremely important dimension. Then poverty. We have in Europe about 35 million people suffering from energy poverty. I think this Green Deal can be an opportunity to dramatically reduce energy poverty by energy efficiency, by also renovating buildings, housing, better housing, quality housing. And we are launching a program in this direction with a renovation wave. So there are different elements here, and also social transfers for those who might be impacted by an increase of energy prices due to ETS. So I think there's a package which takes care of the social dimension of the Green Deal.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Schmidt. So over to you, Deputy Secretary Turk. You've been working on clean energy technology policy for a long time, both at the IEA and in multiple leadership roles with the US government. Why do you think this initiative is important, and why did the US sign up to be a co-leader?
Well, first of all, Wendy, let me thank you for not only hosting this terrific panel, but all your years of work on this issue. Minister O'Regan, it's terrific to see you again. I remember having many conversations on this issue, and incredibly eloquent, as always, opening comments, but even more importantly, for your years and years, literally decades in your case, work on these issues. So thank you for all your public service, especially on these incredibly important issues. And Commissioner Schmidt, it's terrific to be with you as well, and I'm learning from the European leadership on this issue and so many others also. So I just want to, Wendy, to answer your question, just go to something that Minister O'Regan, I think, again, very eloquently put it. And you mentioned I've been working on technology issues, policy issues for many, many years. We've got to reduce price points. There's no doubt about that. We've got to keep pushing that down on a variety of clean energy technologies. We've got to innovate. We've got to have policy levers. But what we need to do as well in the midst of all that is exactly as Minister O'Regan said. We've got to focus on people first and foremost. And we really need to have, the term I really like is people-centered transitions. We've got to think about how we have these clean energy transitions in a people-centric way that really puts real people in the real world at the heart of that. Everybody in all our countries and around the world needs to see themselves in the clean energy future. They need to see the opportunities. They need to see the benefits. They need to see the jobs. They need to see the economic revitalization in their communities, not just in the abstract, not just in essays or papers or peer-reviewed reports or any number of reports that all our ministries and departments put out that have hundreds of pages in them. It's really what happens in that people, that very people-centric kind of way. And as Minister O'Regan again said, and this is how we view it certainly from the U.S. side, there's a moral component to it, and then there's a practical component to it. It's the right thing to do, right? This is the kind of thing we should be doing for all our people. It's the kind of thing governments around the world should be very much centrally focused on. But practically speaking, there is no enduring political support for the kind of wide-scale change we need to have to reduce our carbon emissions unless you bring people, unless you bring communities, unless they see a future in their world, not just 1 year or 2 years, but decades along this transition. So we really have to do the hard work, and it is hard work. We really need to focus in a place-based kind of way. So just an example, Wendy, for you from the US side of things. In 2010, we had about 44% of our electricity produced from coal. 10 years later, for a number of factors, it was less than 20%. That's a lot of coal communities, communities that had their livelihoods on coal for many, many years, put into a real state of transition. That's something we're centrally focused on in the Biden administration. President Biden, when he first came in, put together a task force to really look at this issue. Department of Energy, Secretary Granholm, myself, others of us, very involved in that. We've identified the 25 hardest hit communities, coal communities throughout the U.S. We're making $109 million of assistance, U.S. dollars, directly on that, and identifying $38 billion of broader U.S. assistance, not just from the Department of Energy, but more broadly available. And we'll do the hard work with those communities, listening to those communities, not just imposing a vision of how this should work from Washington, D.C., but really listening to those communities and trying to find and chart pathways going forward on that side of things. So this issue, just as Minister O'Regan and Commissioner Schmidt said, not only important in Canada, not only important in Europe, incredibly important in the U.S., incredibly important around the world, and we're very eager to co-host this incredibly important initiative with Canada and with the EU.
Amazing. And of course, we're very much affected by U.S. policy in this area. So the impact of your work is very, very significant. So back to you, Minister O'Regan. Tell us about what Canada's been doing to put people first in meeting its commitments.
Well, Wendy, in Canada, we kind of began with a very simple premise that we won't be able to make the transition to a low carbon economy without putting people first, like Dan said, and that we will not leave any energy worker and no energy producing region like mine. I'm broadcasting to you from Newfoundland and Labrador, which is the furthest east province, the one closest to Europe, the one in the middle of the North Atlantic. We are an offshore oil jurisdiction. And frankly, this jurisdiction relies more on oil and the royalties than more notable places in this country, like Alberta, of course, with its crude oil being our #1 export as a country. We are the 4th biggest oil producers in the world. And that's not necessarily a way that Canada sees itself, but it is a fact. And so therefore it is extraordinarily important for the hundreds of thousands of people who work in this industry in Alberta, in Saskatchewan, and here in Newfoundland and Labrador that we get this right. We know that the move to net zero emissions is going to change production, it's going to open up new opportunities, and that governments will have a role to play in ensuring that that transition is fair for workers and communities, as both our countries have done in coal. Canada showed, we showed as much really with the communities in our country who were affected by coal. We've invested to diversify local economies, to get workers the skill training that they need to lead and to succeed in a cleaner economy. So when the pandemic hit, we targeted our support to clean up orphan and inactive wells. We put $1.7 billion towards it. It was a way to support workers by maintaining and creating thousands of well-paying jobs, but it also allowed them to fully use their expertise and experience in order to do something that needed to get done. These orphan wells needed to get cleaned up. We also focused our support on improving the environmental performance of oil and gas operations. We created an emissions reduction fund at $750 million to deploy emissions reducing technologies. That was particularly handy here out my way. More broadly, we've taken action to prepare the Canadian workforce for a net zero emissions economy by identifying skills that are in demand now and that we know will be in demand in the future. Our recent federal budget, we released that in April, and included the largest investment in Canadian history in training for workers. And we do that while we're supporting our environmental and economic goals. All of this complements our strengthened climate plan, which will create thousands of jobs by retrofitting homes and buildings and cutting energy costs for Canadian families and businesses, allowing Canadians to do things to their homes in order to lower emissions. Opportunities in a wide range of jobs, from wind turbines and rooftop solar installers to software engineers in our growing electricity sector, and all jobs developed to improve Canada's grids. And there's opportunities for workers in hydrogen. We expect our hydrogen strategy, which we released last fall, we expect, hydrogen could create more than 350,000 high-paying jobs by 2050. So we are proud to be co-leading the Empowering People initiative. It reflects the position that Canada has promoted internationally for many years, including our vocal support for the Equal by 30 campaign, which aims at closing the gender gap in the energy sector. And as we recover from COVID-19, we need to keep in mind that those hardest hit by the economic downturn, that includes women, persons with disabilities, Indigenous peoples, Black and racialized Canadians. We have to do that while continuing to grow the supply of clean energy and decarbonize our energy sector on the path to net zero. People are our top priority throughout all of this. And we need to work together in order to make sure that, during this transition, as I have said, in this forum and many other international forums and throughout this country, we need to make sure no one's left behind. No one. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's such an important message. So I wonder, Commissioner Schmidt, if you can tell us more about the focus that the EU has placed on upskilling, reskilling, and training generally.
Yes, thank you very much. Just to say that it is a great pleasure to listen to Deputy Secretary Dave Burke from the US. And really, it's a very good commitment the US government takes in this very important area. So we really are very pleased by that. Well, skills are fundamental in a period of major technological change, because we see that in new energies, hydrogen, heat pumps, all this is changing the way how people use energy, how this functions. And therefore, I think we have to adapt our skills effort. And skills is in the heart also of social rights, because people should get the right to be reskilled, upskilled. If new jobs come up, and this happens, we all agree that this revolution, because it is some kind of a new industrial revolution, will create a lot of new jobs. And so we have to allow people to transit from existing jobs to these new jobs, but also educate our young for these new jobs. We have an ambitious skills agenda with different areas, including also vocational training, permanent training, so lifelong learning. We have established an objective in the social agenda. The Commission is aiming at that at least 60% of all people, of all workers, get a year, every year, a training, a retraining, a reskilling. So I think this is what will allow us to accelerate this transformation and to take people along, to give them the opportunity to keep their job or just to change their job in a very good condition. Well, you know, automotive sector is a very important sector in European industry. Here, millions of people have to be reskilled because we are changing now from the traditional engine to electric mobility. And this is supported by the European Union. This is supported also by regions where there's heavy concentration of car industry. And I'm quite optimistic that through investment, through reskilling, we will be successful in this transformation.
Thank you so much. And the skills agenda is so key. I wonder, Deputy Secretary Turk, if you can wrap up for us by talking a little bit about why you see the CEM initiative as being important in the value it adds.
Thanks, Wendy. I think the first thing that I need to emphasize is why the CEM is so important. It really is the group of countries that frankly matter the most in the world if we're going to be successful in this clean energy transition. It's the bigger countries of the world, but it's also some smaller countries that are the global leaders in the clean energy transition front, all in a relatively efficient, very action-oriented forum. This is not a group of countries or a forum that's meant to just sit around and negotiate. That's important, but this is a forum to roll up the sleeves and get the work done and go forward in that way. Secondly, I think it's important to recognize the particular point in history we're in right now, where we've got a variety of key countries around the world with the net zero commitments by 2050. In many instances, China's a 2060 carbon neutrality goal. That's great, and you see companies and investors and others, we need everyone to rally around as I think we're having this tipping point on the net zero commitments. But what we really need to do is actually implement those net zero commitments, make that progress in the near term, build upon that year in and year out. And again, I think it's these countries in the CEM that are going to be the ones leading that if we're successful or not. And we're certainly going to do everything we can from the US side. And again, as Minister O'Regan, as Commissioner Schmidt, all of us have talked about, it's the people-centered transition. And this initiative really makes sure that we don't lose sight of that. We put that first. We listen to communities. We learn from each other. We learn those practical experiences, those lessons learned, so that we can put people in the center of our transitions. We can learn from each other in real time as we go forward, so that we can all be successful in this incredibly important, historic opportunity, frankly, that we all have in front of us.
Thank you so much for your insightful comments. Now at this point, I'd like to turn to this year's host of CEM and a participant in the initiative. Please welcome Javiera Aldunate, head of the International Affairs Office for the Chilean Ministry of Energy. I believe he has a video to roll.
My name is Javiera Aldunate, and I'm the head of the International Affairs Office at the Ministry of Energy in Chile. Our ministry is leading the energy transition strategy for Chile, with both the public and private sector being an active part of this. Thus, when updating our country's current long-term energy policy, the importance of energy transition, considering social, economic, and environmental aspects, is highlighted through participatory processes with joint actions conceived and carried out with those stakeholders involved in the territories. We seek to foster sustainable intercultural energy development that allow us to carry the energy transition in a fair manner, promoting due diligence, safeguarding the rights of the most vulnerable, as well as encouraging active citizen participation in the field of its design and implementation. Inclusion of plurality, diversity, and respect for human rights is key in the process. Our Just Transition strategy is based on fundamental principles that guide the community-based development of energy projects. If done right, a people-centered approach to energy transition creates the enabling conditions for a clean, prosperous, net zero future. We seek for early and continuous dialogue and collaboration, which implies establishing effective communication mechanisms to guarantee a long-term relationship. With advocacy, good faith, and willingness to reach agreements, weighting different opinions in the final decision. We pursue the common good in order to improve the quality of life of community with measurable and reportable indicators. The current landscape of existing skills will help us to better understand how this can be leveraged. Also, will give us the great opportunity to promote changes in the field of training needs, developing new technology, new uses of infrastructure, new products and services, focused on generating new jobs for men and women. The transitions toward a clean and renewable matrix requires synergies and coordinated efforts, and above all, global collaboration. This is why it is so important for us to participate in this initiative being launched today. The range of participants will certainly highlight unique global, regional, and local perspectives, best practices in the context of training and transition, and the role that diversity can play in shaping the future zero-emission workforce and ensuring a just transition.
Minister Aldunate, I want to now turn over to Molly Johnson, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister of Natural Resources Canada. She's going to provide a brief overview of the Empowering People initiative. Over to you.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Well, from North America, and what a great way to start the day. I'm so pleased to be here to represent Canada in the newly formed Empowering People initiative. I'd like to thank our European and American co-leads for all of their support in helping us get this initiative off the ground so quickly, and to early participants like Chile for agreeing to support our vision for a new CEM initiative. Perhaps we could move to the next slide, if that's possible. This initiative aims to broaden the discussion taking place within the CEM community, to focus on the people side of the energy transition and the skills needed to support it. It also seeks to highlight the importance of just transitions, inclusivity, and workforce development as key drivers of change and necessary ingredients for a net zero future. The Empowering People initiative will work collaboratively with existing CEM initiatives, acting as an umbrella initiative that builds on and complements the existing work streams. Our intent is to add to the great work already happening within the CEM community, ensuring the social and labor dimensions of the transition and the economic opportunities they present are front and center across all of our thinking. That is why we look forward to working with our CEM work streams across all of the other ones to develop tools, best practices that we can all draw upon for empowering workers and communities, and ultimately to help complement all of the CEM's clean energy solutions with people-centered approaches that accelerate efforts to achieve our climate goals. I'm also pleased to announce our first collaboration. We're working with our colleagues from the Smart Grids Action Networks, ISGAN, on a deliverable for CEM 13. Stay tuned for the formal announcement tomorrow at the ISGAN Award of Excellence ceremony. So many of you have taken the time to connect with us over the last 6 months, and we really look forward to finding creative ways to collaborate and establish lasting partnerships through the CEM community and beyond to advance this important area of work. As you can see, the Empowering People initiative has built a strong coalition of co-leads, participants, and partner organizations. We're ready to work with all of you to accelerate just and inclusive transitions that put people first and help deliver on the promise of a clean and prosperous future for all. If you haven't done so already, I'd strongly encourage you to reach out to us. The EPI team would welcome the opportunity to hear from you on how to build an initiative that strengthens the great work happening under the CEM. Let's work together to create a people-centric clean future that empowers everybody for success. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from our expert panel on their insights about empowering people in the clean energy transition. Thanks so much.
And wonderful to hear from you. We have another expert panel, which I'm very excited to introduce. First, from the World Energy Council, Philippe Joubert. From the World Bank, Sideshna Ghosh Banerjee. From the ILO, Srivanas. And from the SDG 7 Youth Constituency, Kervel Baird. Thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your expertise. So we're here to talk about the socioeconomic dimensions of the energy transition needed to build a cleaner, more sustainable, and more inclusive future, and something that the SDGs, of course, emphasize. So I'd like to hear more about the human dimension to the discussions around energy transitions and climate actions and the interconnections that you see. Philippe, if I may begin with you.
Yes, please.
You have worked with organizations, helping make them more sustainable, getting them to adopt the appropriate governance structures, asking management to do the right thing. In your opinion, how can we prepare policy for an energy transition that puts people first and leaves no one behind?
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you for having me. Obviously, I have done this transition for a lot of organizations, from big, small, and very large, and it all depends on the circumstances. But you can draw one line, a common feature. The success lies in trusting the people, make sure that they share your vision and sense of urgency, and feel part of the solution. The first thing you have to make sure is that they understand that the way we have been behaving till now, like business as usual, is dead, and that we cannot continue to take nature for granted and unlimited. We have new risks now, new opportunities, and new behavior of resources that create the condition for an urgent change in our business model. Second, you have to revisit your purpose and make sure that you adapt it. Make sure that the new world is compatible with this, and respect the new role of business in the new society, and build your strategy from it. and exchange with all your stakeholders, including, as it was said before, with the communities. And then you have to design your governance systems and your evaluation of performance to be fair and challenging and consistent with your goals, to be a guide and a booster for energy and not a resistance to change. And don't forget the so-called externality. This is why we are now concentrating on board of directors to make sure that they lead the change necessary.
Thanks so much. And over to you, Sadeshna. Just can you share a perspective on how these issues play out in the Global South and what the lessons are for CEM?
Thank you very much, Wendy, and thank you for the invitation to the World Bank. As an international financial institution, our project focuses on poverty reduction and shared prosperity, while adhering to the International Climate Change Commitment through our support for the energy transition. It's important to acknowledge that there isn't a single transition. Different countries are undergoing different transitions, some from coal and renewables, some from no energy access or diesel generators to clean energy access to grids, mini grids and standalone solar systems. So we are really speaking about transition not only away from fossils, but towards all the goals of SDG 7. The World Bank projects, especially in the clean energy, are often first of its kind projects. When we started to work on rural electrification in Bangladesh many years ago, there was no local supply chain of solar home systems or support for operations and maintenance and payment collection. So people needed to be trained, local entrepreneurs and financing entities needed to be supported. Similar is the case right now in Kenya, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. So on workforce development skill building, which is the topic of this panel, the World Bank supports local academic and training institutions, investing in capacity and skill building at all levels of participation in the energy transition efforts, from policymakers to electricity utility staff and technicians, as well as promoting local entrepreneurship, particularly targeting women and youth. In Ethiopia, for example, the government and the World Bank are working together to reduce the gaps between men and women in access to finance to purchase solar panels, and at indicators like literacy, gender-based violence rates, women's representation in academia. As a result of this network and this work that we have carried out, clear commitments and actions to improve gender equality were embedded in the National Electrification Program, which is currently in implementation. And this is not just the case in Africa where I work, but also in South Asia, which is part of the Global South. As, for example, we support the South Asia Women in Power Sector Professional Network. We call it WePower. Skill development will remain an integral part of our agenda as we continue our support our member countries in green, inclusive, and resilient recovery from COVID. Thank you, Wendy.
No, thank you. So important. I guess now, Srinivas, can you bring in the ILO perspective and tell us about the just transition principles and how they apply?
Thank you very much, Wendy. Thank you for having the ILO on this panel. Wendy, in 2015, when the Paris Agreement was adopted, ILO adopted the guidelines for a just transition towards environmentally sustainable economies and societies for all. These guidelines provide a practical framework to achieve a successful transition to low carbon economy. The guidelines underscore three key principles, which are policy coherence, social dialogue, and gender equality. Let me deal with the three in a little bit detail, what exactly these guidelines intend to achieve. These guidelines basically seek issue policy coherence to achieve a just transition. Skills development is one of the key policy areas highlighted in the guidelines, along with macroeconomic, industrial, social, environmental, and labor market policies. ILO research shows that the transition to energy sustainability alone could lead to a net job creation of 18 million by 2030. However, we must also not forget that some 6 million jobs could be lost. A just transition for all will not happen automatically. It would require increased investments in reskilling and upskilling to equip workers in the declining sectors with the technical and core skills, including digital skills, to facilitate their transition to the newly created jobs. So to increase investment in skills for a greener future, there are some concrete steps that countries and the energy sector could consider taking. First and foremost, understanding what are the future skills needs, that is crucial. We need to build an effective mechanism to anticipate and monitor skills needs for a just transition. Second, we need to enhance policy coherence between skills development, energy, and environmental policies. To do so, we need to establish an institutional mechanism to coordinate among line ministries and relevant agencies with active participation of social partners who have high stakes on the greening agenda. In other words, social dialogue involving whole of government, employers, and workers' organizations should be the principal mechanism for developing forward-looking skill strategies to be integrated into energy and environmental policies. Lastly, a just transition, particularly in the context of COVID-19 crisis, will require emphasis on gender equality. An ILO study suggests that current occupational gender stereotypes are likely to persist. Women will get only a fraction of the jobs created unless measures are taken to train women in relevant skills. Therefore, gender equality should be at the core of countries' efforts for developing forward-looking and inclusive skill strategies. With these key three principles, policy coherence, social dialogue, and gender equality, we will increase a chance of achieving a just transition for all. Thank you, Wendy.
Oh, thank you. And now over to you, Kervel. Can you tell us about the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub and more about SDG 7?
Thank you. So the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub promotes skills and knowledge building for youth to become effective agents to be changed in their communities. Because as Mr. O'Regan acknowledged in the previous panel, while youth are the future, we have innovative ideas that are needed now to deliver the future that we want. So their unique socialization allows them to critically assess challenges in their communities and across scales and develop solutions. So this is the premise of the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub, to create an enabling environment by facilitating the skills and knowledge building through webinars, networking, and mentorship.
Sorry. The SDGs are so important in doing this work because of the interconnections. Very impressive project. Philippe, back to you. Can you talk about the World Energy Council and its emphasis on humanizing energy? Tell us why it's more important than ever.
Thank you. Certainly, because we understand that the nature of the change in front of us, and at the World Energy Council, we think that we are facing a constellation of disruption, societal, technological, environmental, climate, geopolitical. So each of these disruptions rebounding and nourishing each other and impacting to form what we call the perfect storm. So a human holistic approach is absolutely necessary. The silo approach that we had till now will not work. Technology will be part of the answer, but it's obviously not the answer. So we will need to reach out to the human behavior, starting with the demand side, not only with the quantity of energy that we are asking, but also with being part of the solution, like sobriety, moderation, collaboration will be fundamental to orient the demand. We know in all change, there will be winners and losers. And we are very good at taking care of the winners. And this time, because it's a systemic and holistic approach, we have to take care of the loser, or even of the part of the people that are losing, if we want to make sure that we decrease the resistance and we allow the speed of pace for change and cross the finish line together. So the first action that we are pushing now through the World Energy Council is the road builders, now that we think that the road planning has been very well done, and we need now to build the road.
Thanks so much. It's so important. I wonder, Srinivas, if we can turn back to you and talk about the impact of digitization and automation on work in the sector and what it means for future skills.
Thank you, Wendy. There is much discussion about how technological advancement may affect employment and the skills required in the future. At the ILO, we recognize the opportunities and benefits brought by the adoption of new technologies. Historically, technological changes began with labor-saving efficiency gains. However, new technologies have also created a range of new tasks, creating the type of jobs that did not exist before. They have eventually led to net decent job creation. We already see a number of innovations in the energy sector. For example, the shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy sources is taking place thanks to affordable clean energy technologies. There will be a greater role of technologies and innovation for driving a real transformation of energy production systems and energy use. In this journey of transformation, preparing the current and future workforce with the right set of skills is crucial. Of course, it is important to take into account the real pain that the energy transition will bring. There is an indication that in most countries, employment in power plants has declined over the past decades, following deregulation and growing automation. For example, in South Africa, some 70,000 jobs have been lost in the electricity generation sector between 1980 and 2000 due to greater automation. In the European Union region, 300,000 jobs in electricity generation sector were produced between 1997 and 2004. But we also know that certain occupations are likely to be in high demand. Such jobs can be found in the building and science and engineering professions. To minimize the risks of job displacement, we need proactive training support for workers. As the Commissioner Smith mentioned, a process of supporting reskilling and upskilling and lifelong learning strategies with special attention given to the disadvantaged groups of people is crucially important. A set of policy measures, including active labor market policies, career guidance and counseling, targeted inclusive training measures, and adequate social protection should be put in place so that no one is left behind. Thank you, Wendy.
Such an important point. And I'll just add, we think about technology as disruptive and creating transition in terms of jobs, but we also know that technology provides opportunities for upskilling and reskilling in new ways, for giving people access to training and other opportunities. So it can be very helpful in actually helping to manage this transition. So back to you, Caravel. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of gender and equity when we're thinking about capacity building and upskilling and so on, particularly with respect to clean energy transitions?
I'll begin by echoing the sentiments of my colleague and acknowledging that we need to apply lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, which highlighted the disproportionate burden that marginalized groups face. And in order to leave no one behind, we would need to keep our word and reconstruct better societies that provide opportunities and ensure that these marginalized groups are equipped and enabled to play central roles in a just clean energy transition.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And we've seen in Canada, we've seen around the world that COVID really highlighted inequalities that previously existed and made absolutely everything worse, whether for women or racialized groups, Indigenous peoples, and so on. So really good to see that you're focusing on that. We have a few minutes left for some other questions and discussion. And I wonder, one of the things that people often think about when they think about technology and clean energy is they think that innovation is about making new tools, making new technologies. And we know that innovation is actually about doing things differently. And that's why from my perspective, the human-centered approach is so critical. You can have the best green technology in the world. If nobody uses it, you are not going to achieve the outcomes that you hope for. So I wonder if panelists have some thoughts about ways to not just focus on upskilling and reskilling and addressing the talent issues when we think about a human-centered approach, but also some of the behavioral changes that we need to drive, and what some of the tools and approaches are there that a human-centered approach helps leverage. Anyone want to kick that off?
Wendy, I can come in from a World Bank perspective, if that's okay.
Sure.
So when we work with our clients around the world, and we have, of course, work in all the regions of the world, and we typically discuss 3 topics. One is local industrialization, businesses and services, to enhance the involvement of the local players in the value chain. And that's how we can also create the community buy-in as well. And that will also help in maximizing job creation, skills development, and transfer of knowledge. The second is on community development as a very important principle, to ensure that the local communities in the areas of implementation of the projects and benefit from the project in different ways, including through actions increasing their resilience and enhancing their livelihood. The third is that all of our panelists talked about gender equality, to ensure that the men and women benefit from the renewable energy project specifically, launched with a proactive policy to promote female employment throughout this renewable energy project cycle and across renewable energy value chain. In my previous intervention, I mentioned about examples from Bangladesh as well as African countries that are going through this experience. And we have to ensure in our journey to the SDGs level and energy transition that no one is a paradigm to rapidly scale up access to both electricity and clean solutions. Both deliver essential modern energy services that contribute to reducing poverty, and they advance the other SDGs complementary. So therefore, investments in human capital development enable faster and local transition adapted to local conditions and will drive further innovation in technologies, business models, financing, policies, and market enablers to accelerate the pace of energy access expansion. And let me stop here.
Well, I'd actually like to dig in on that a little bit more, because I think the World Bank has really been, frankly, a world leader in leveraging what I would call procurement and investments to shape behavior and priorities, to build those criteria right into the grants that you're making. And I wonder, are there any examples of impacts that you can show and share with the audience here today? And then I'm going to come to the others and ask if you can think of specific examples of how tools and levers have been used to shape behavior and drive change. So can you talk a little bit more about what the World Bank does?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Wendy. I mean, I definitely wanted to talk about Kenya, Nigeria, and Ethiopia, which are the examples that I was mentioning earlier. In addition to Bangladesh, the Bangladesh story is a little bit older. It was in the late 90s, but the Kenya, Nigeria, and Ethiopia are the ones that are going on currently. And in Kenya, for example, in our early work on Lighting Africa and later Lighting Global programs, that enabled a huge ecosystem of local rural electrification, including fostering of local entrepreneurs, inclusion of women and youth in sales of these systems, their operations and maintenance, professions and jobs that did not exist before. So today we are doing similar work in the mini-grids program, for example, in Ethiopia, and thinking about what productive uses can one really sort of take on with an anchor load as a financially viable mini-grid, and on the other hand, how these productive users can create jobs and income for local communities. People can run a welding shops, use clothes, use electricity for milling, pumping, cold storage, etc. And this, on one hand, liberates time for women and children that were often doing some other tasks manually, but it also opens up opportunities for local innovations and entrepreneurship. So we have been very considerate about including these phenomena into our project development, and we see that these results are actually being achieved in our countries around the world.
And it's so interesting to me because it's also an example of how the SDGs interconnect. So you can drive towards a green economy, address poverty alleviation, gender equality, and many more issues that are of concern by being very strategic and understanding those interconnections. What about the ILO? It puts a lot of energy into trying to define best practices and move beyond sort of words on paper. Are there some examples that you'd like to share of how you can drive change?
Thank you, Wendy. Before going to example, I just want to touch upon an important point of when we talk about human-centered approach, putting people at the center in terms of this transition, whether it is clean energy transition or digital transition, for example, we need to really prepare a ground and create a culture for preparing people for multiple transitions in life. So school to work transition is an important angle, but now with these transitions, we need to support people for multiple transitions: school to work transition, work to work transition, work to family, family back to school, and also because of the shifting demographic changes, we need to also enable people of older age groups. We are also able to embrace these changes and transitions. So how do we do this? You talked about some innovative tools. One of the important principles that we need to revisit the education system, lifelong learning as the organizing principle of education, rather than just the initial education only. If either public education system and other upskilling, reskilling systems, reorient lifelong learning, and that will enable multiple transitions from a people point of view. Okay, markets will continue to demand, skills, but if we want to put people at the center, we need to prepare people with, for example, foundational skills, learning to learn skills, core skills, skills for innovation, and those, those are the investments that need to be made to really prepare people. For example, you asked about a tool. We are now revisiting our global tool on core skills. Earlier, a lot of focus on the core skills like communication, creativity, but these days it is important to include, for example, green skills for everybody, basic digital skills. So we are incorporating those skills and developing new tools for supporting people with multiple transitions.
Thanks so much. And as Minister O'Regan mentioned, Canada launched its Skills for Success initiative quite recently, which is focused on exactly some of the things that you mentioned. What about you, Carvel? Are there any particular ways in which we can harness young people to drive change?
Thanks. I'll give the example of projects from the young innovators and entrepreneurs who have participated in the Youth Sustainable Energy Hub. So they have projects that really meet the needs of their communities, such as microgrid or small hydropower. And so by investing in the ideas of young people, I think that would truly empower them to be able to scale their solutions and play central roles and be key figures in our just clean energy transition.
Harnessing young people is so absolutely critical. And I think entrepreneurial training is something that is misunderstood. It's just aimed at creating tech startups, but social innovators and teaching people to apply new skills that will help them create the future. I think it's wonderful. Last word to you, Philippe. Any sort of priority levers or approaches that you think are critical to consider when we look at best practices for driving change?
Thank you. Yes, at World Energy Council, when we know that when we talk energy, we don't talk energy in reality. We talk development and human developments. That are the two issues are completely interrelated. So, but on the other hand, we have to face these boundaries that we have discussed, and we understand that if desire is infinite, the world is unfortunately limited, and we have to tackle this issue seriously. So we will be 100 years old in 2024. So we will focus till then on three main priorities. First, accelerating energy literacy, and most interestingly, with a program of new leaders. We take people around their 30s and we help them to become the world leader of tomorrow. As I said, we are also involving people with the different prism that winner and loser should be taken care of, but more importantly, we have to take care of the losers. And we have to concentrate on workforce transition and help the transfer of skills to make sure that they are adapted to the world we are all building and desiring.
Thank you so much. And I think people have given such powerful insights today, both in terms of the conceptual framework around why it's so important to have a people-centered approach, but also practical examples of how that plays out, how we get the engagement of communities, how we create the workforce that we need, and frankly, how we drive the behavioral change that is absolutely essential to create this new future. So I want to thank all of our panelists who took part in the event today, as well as the co-leads for the initiative, My Home Canada, the European Commission, and the United States for their leadership. Thanks also to Chile for as our host, and to the CEM Secretariat for their help with this launch event. I hope you found it as exciting and inspiring as I have. And at this stage, I would like to turn over to Dan Dorner to close out the event. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you to the ministers, and thank you to our expert panelists. Really excellent panels and presentations showing both political and expert leadership. Also, huge thanks from us to our initiative co-leads, Canada, the EU, and the US. The CEM's Empowering People initiative is one that I personally am very excited to see evolve and prosper, as well as to build the links with relevant existing CEM initiatives, like on the Clean Energy Education and Empowerment initiative and on the Equal by 30 campaign. More broadly, look, thank you so much for joining us for these important high-level launch events of these new CEM work streams today. We've had an excellent and inspirational range of speakers and partners. Thank you to all of them. It's been exactly what we wanted. It's been energizing and it's been clean. But these are just the launch events. Now is the time for action. So please be inspired and join us and help make sure that together we can have impact. We need to see these new international collaborations make a difference to help make change happen. I hope you've enjoyed the events. I invite you to watch the many other excellent CEM 12 events in the virtual auditorium or on demand this week. And importantly, I invite you to watch the CEM 12 Ministerial meeting, the centerpiece of CEM 12, live and firsthand on the 2nd of June. For now, though, stay safe, take care, thank you, and goodbye.